It's your boy Young Love, I give him that thing. Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi dollar, banaban. Pancho leg stand and punchy America. Banyi dollar, banaban. Walk on your leg, kankaro watana watching. Oga level leg, gear, wow, very leg. Panda with ya, punchy America. Banyi dollar, bano. Chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out? Paku panda gear, what ya be dollar venting. Stand and punchy America, Banyi dollar, banaban. Pancho leg stand and punchy America, Banyi dollar, banaban. Walk on your leg, kankaro watana watching. Oga level leg, gear, wow, very leg. Panda with ya, punchy America, Panya dollar, bano. Chingatongo pandon, could you ever buy a check out? Paku panda gear, what ya be dollar venting.
Thank you so much to our viewers, wherever you are tuning in. Welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries. And in the studio with us is our usual guest, Mr. Edmund Yakani, CEO of CEPO. And we still have one of the guests, Awuolic. He will join us shortly. And we are here basically on Lagos State Media Table Talk to analyze the speech of the president, his New Year message to the citizen of South Sudan. We really need these two gentlemen will give us inside information. What does this speech contain? They will unpack it and they will give us what exactly is the main theme of the president's speech or the New Year message, and what hope does this speech portray or send to the citizens that are suffering in Upper Nile region, in Barkazal and Equatorial region. Up to this juncture, I'm reminding you again, our viewers, keep sharing this live show, and our show will not go longer. It will be at least 1 hour or less than that, because the main theme is to dissect and analyze the president, His Excellency Salva Kiir Mayardit, New Year message to his people. I will yield it back to my brother Abraham Adit, also to give his opening remarks, and then I will move to Edmund Yakani. Abraham, the floor is yours.
Thank you, my brother Mjok, and also my brother Edmund. Welcome to Lagos State Media again, and on all the viewers. I would like to wish you Happy New Year. I hope God will bless you and your family and bring new things again. So what I will go ahead, so let my brother Edmund introduce himself, and then I will play the video. Edmund, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name's Edmund Yakani, as usual. I'm Executive Director of CEPO, Community Empowerment for Progress Organization. Of course, today we're just looking at the speech of the president. But before we go, is also I convey condolences to our relatives, which yesterday there were deadly incident in Abyei in Romich area where mobilized armed groups from Nuer and Twitch Dinka attacked them. But of course, it's just like any other incident in a part of the country. Just so my condolences to the families of those who have lost 13 lives in the part of Abyei. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So let me play the president's speech, and then we will take it from there.
Fellow citizens, let me begin my remarks by paying tribute to Comrade General John Kong Nguyen, who passed away in Nairobi, Kenya this week. General Kong was a selfless nationalist and dedicated to the liberation war. He is a hero who worked relentlessly for the attainment of our freedom. On behalf of the government of South Sudan, I would like to once again convey my deepest condolences to his family, his colleagues in the liberation struggle, and those who are affected by his death. We will always remember this great son of South Sudan for eternity. Fellow citizens, today we close the year 2022 and will be welcoming 2023 in few hours to come. As we reflect on the successes and challenges of the year 2022, we must remember that we made some achievements because we had political will and the same spirit. Find solutions to socio-economic and political challenges that awaits us in 2023. More importantly, we must learn from our mistakes in 2022 as we usher in the new year. This year's Christmas celebration has been largely peaceful in urban centers across the country, relegates our efforts towards achieving durable peace, security, and delivering developmental services to our citizens, and join us in working to promote peaceful coexistence among our communities. We have worked hard to implement the chapters, implementing some provisions, and since we do not want to return our country to war, we choose to get everything right this time as parties to the agreement. We agreed on a new roadmap that extends the transitional period by 24 months, this is the time we felt was needed to address the implementation of the provisions we fell short in. Fellow citizens, the agreement on the roadmap was reached by the parties via a consensus without external direction. Personally, I consider the agreement by the parties to extend the transitional period on our part as a country. For this, I thank all the parties to the agreement for their cooperation and urge them to maintain this spirit as we implement the roadmap. Reforms in our system of governance. I have, for example, assented to the following. 1. The Sudan People's Liberation Army Act 2009, amended Act 2022. 2. The Political Parties Act 2022, amendment Act 2022. 3. Appropriation Act 2020-2023. 4. Financial Act 2022-2023. 5. The Constitution Making Process Act 2022. 6. The Transitional Constitution of the Republic of South Sudan 2011 Amendment Number 11 Act 2022. 7. The National Police Service Amendment Act 2022. 8. The National Wildlife Service Amendment Act 2022. 9. National Prison Service Act 2011 Amendment Act 2022. And 10. The National Civil Defense Service Act 2022. More bills are in the process of being passed by the Parliament, and I urge all our parliamentarians to speed up the process with the appropriation and financial acts in place. The Ministry of Finance and Planning now has tools to manage government expenditures. It will be able to pay government institutions within their allocated budget on monthly basis. Equally, these laws will empower it to require these ministries to report back on their expenditures. Fellow citizens, for a long time, we have struggled with the issue of salary arrears of our public servants. I'm happy to say that this issue has been finally resolved. The Ministry of Finance and Planning is closing this year with no arrears owed to public servants, except for the diplomatic missions whose areas are yet to be cleared. This is an important step in the right direction. Another challenge we have been facing is the issue of paying a living wage to the government workers. Since we realigned our currency 2016, the civil servants salaries have been consistently outpaced by inflation, and the war-induced economic hardships did not allow us to correct this problem. This year, the Cabinet has finally resolved to increase the salaries of civil servants and constitutional post holders. This cabinet resolution has been referred to a committee within the economic cluster. We will study it and together with the Minister of Finance and Planning find a revenue sources to finance this increment. This, I strongly believe, will motivate civil servants, boost their morale, and improve government performance. Fellow citizens, I need not to elaborate on the importance of each bill I have mentioned. What is important is to note that these laws pave the way for us to put our country back to the path of stability. It is now our collective responsibility to support the institutions that will be set up to implement these laws. For example, the work to set up Constitutional Development Committee, CDC, that will draft permanent constitution and must begin now. This committee will require the cooperation of all citizens to share their views on what they would want to see reflected in their supreme law. Fellow citizens, while peace is holding and our country has survived the impact of COVID-19 and the destruction caused by floods, I am deeply concerned by subnational violence taking place in some areas within our country. I have publicly spoken about the danger posed by this violence to the gains we have achieved in the implementation. of the revitalized peace agreement. I have also advised that have potential to cause any conflict. They can be addressed through dialogue without resorting to communal killings. This country is enough for all of us. If we work together, each community can pursue its means of economic livelihood without interfering with others, to focus on developing our country rather than remaining in this situation of continuous insecurity and violence. I just mentioned some people who are reckless always say that we have liberated this country. Who are you to talk with us? Nobody has not participated in the liberation. All of us did our parts. Fellow citizens, on December 28, 2022, I bid farewell to a contingent of 750 soldiers who are joining the East African Force in the Democratic Republic of Congo. These troops are part of our regional contribution to the East Africa community efforts to stabilize Congo. This contribution does not negate that fact that we have challenges in our home. But South Sudan as a country must move forward by doing its part among its peers. Fellow citizens, we are committed to achieving an inclusive peace in our country. As you may know, we were engaged in the Rome peace process led by the community of Sant'Egidio with the whole out groups. Since the start of this process, we are preparing to engage with them in October, but they have continuously engaged in destabilizing activities. Even when we have signed commitment of cessation of hostilities with them, given that this group has not shown seriousness in the Rome process, I suspended the talks with them until that time when they are ready to hold talks, genuine talks with the government. It was me who refused to allow our delegation to go to Rome until when these people leave what they are doing. In my brief remarks on December 25, 2022, during Christmas prayers in the Catholic Cathedral in Qatar, I declared the coming year as the year of reconciliation, forgiveness, and development. And in that, I also added that I have forgiven Riek Machar. I would like to repeat again in this address that 2023 is the year of forgiveness. reconciliation, and development, and urge all of you to work to achieve them in this coming year. This call for forgiveness is even more pressing now because on February 3rd to 5th, 2023, we will be receiving His Holiness Pope Francis in Juba. The Holy Father will be joined by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Right Reverend Justin Welby, and the moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, the Right Reverend Ian Greenshields. We are honored to have this first and its kind trip by leaders of churches to our country. It has never happened that these three groups move together, but they have decided that they will come to South Sudan together. When the Pope sent Cardinal Pietro Parolin to Juba in July this year, his main message to us was to fully implement the revitalized peace agreement and to give peace and reconciliation a chance. In this spirit of forgiveness, peace and reconciliation, I am pardoning 16 prisoners who are currently serving their sentences in Juba, Yambio, Kwajok, and Rumbek. Finally, I would like to extend my warmest wishes to all of you across the country. Have a happy and a prosperous New Year 2023. May God bless you all and our country, the Republic of South Sudan.
Kwer Medit,
Hello.
greetings to you, Abraham.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Happy to see you once again.
Thank you very much. Chief Yakani, how are you?
Abraham, fine, pushing.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, welcome. So you can take over. Joke, I have Comrade Manon, the leader of SPLM chapter in the United States. So he's with me in Clubhouse too. So you guys continue.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Abraham Medit. Yeah, to our viewers and especially to our comrades in Clubhouse, basically we invited these two gentlemen to come and give us their perspective, dissect and analyze the president's speech for the new year. Many South Sudanese sometimes it's hard to pay attention to get the clear contents of the president. But the two gentlemen on the podium here with us will give us exactly what the president's message means for the new year 2023 and what is the way forward for the country despite there are a lot of challenges which president himself acknowledged in his remark. I will begin with Mr. Edmund Yakani. Give us your opening remark, and then we move to Awuolic before we dive into our conversation. Remember, our time will be at least 45 minutes. on this table talk. Thank you so much. Edmund?
Thank you very much. I may not finish at 35, at least 30 minutes I can be with you, but of course I'll keep on listening, and my brother Abraham Awuolic can take us further. So I think in the beginning, let's say thanks for bringing me back on your show. It's a show that we share. And I'd like to say also Happy New Year to everyone, wherever you are as South Sudanese, as you're tuning to this particular conversations, the conversations that help us as we believe dialogue is the only tool that can make us build the nation we want, and we can become nationalists through dialogue. So it's a sense of dialogue, it's a sense of building consensus, sharing ideas, sharing arguments. We may disagree in the arguments, but that should not be a source of violence. That should be a source of enriching our understanding and our knowledge, so that we can all work together and reach consensus for the South Sudan that we want, where there'll be no discrimination, no oppression of others. We don't lose lives. And of course, before I will conclude, I'd like to say condolence to the families of our brothers in Abyei, which actually is the first deadly and inhuman incident where we have seen our brothers from Abyei been attacked by a coordinated, well-armed 200 herders from a mixture of Twitch Dinka and then Nuer. They attacked. Of course, we don't support South Sudanese killing each other, but this trend is becoming uncontrollable and it's becoming disturbing. So condolence to the families and condolence to the whole community of Abyei and South Sudanese in general. So I have not much. I play the pass to you, and the chance goes back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for your remark. And we also pay our tributes and condolences to the families of the victims. It was not so long ago, especially last week, when we were discussing the issue of Murle, which were under attack by Nuerlo youth. It's very unfortunate that even the beginning of New Year, we are opening the new book with the sad news and sorrows. Very unfortunate indeed. Abraham Awuolic, the chance is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Majuk Makur. Greetings to you. Happy New Year. And Abraham Adit and members of Lake State Media. Happy New Year to all of you, and continue to do a good job for our people to have access to information. And greeting to our brother Edmund Yakani, who has been at the center of advocacy for protection and human rights of various groups in the country. I'm delighted that I could be on this space. I also share a sense of sadness for the events happening in our country, recent clashes in Pibor and now in Twitch, and of course in Mongala and other locations across the country. It is sad, but it is the reality of our country. And I also want to seize the moment also to pass my condolences to the family of Gerald Gordon Kong, John Kong, I mean, who passed away recently, a man who fought for his country, is a true liberator. And it is unfortunate that we are losing these historical figures of our liberation. And as we bid farewell to him, the challenge is on us to protect and to guarantee the freedom for which they gave their entire life. And so I look forward to having this discussion on the statement of the president and what that means for the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Abraham Awuolic, for your opening remarks. We will move straight away to unpack this message, the president message for the new year.
Can we give a chance to Manon introduce himself, and then you continue?
All right, thank you. Sorry for that. Manon, the chance is yours to introduce yourself, and we are happy that you join us on the other side of Clubhouse, also to give us your message in regard to the president New Year national address. We are happy that you are there as the leader of the SPLM, which is the ruling party of our nation. The chance is yours, Benjamin.
Okay, thank you, Brother Mehdi, and the Lakes State Media. And I will say happy New Year's for all South Sudanese globally. And my greeting also to our guest here, Mr. Edward, Yakani, civil society organization, which is CEPO, and Brother Awuolic, PCCA leader. I greet you all, and also I send my condolences to the recent violence across the country. We are wishing for 2023 to be a year of peace, restore the security in our country. And my condolences also to late General Gordon Kong and his family. Those are people who serve this country without condition. And we pray for him, and may God put him in his right hand. Thank you. I yield back to you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I yield back microphone to you, Miguel.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we appreciate that remark, Manon. Yeah, let's move straight to our conversation. Mr. Edmund Yakani, you're on the grassroots, and you know what is happening across the country as we were closing the new year and opening, while we were closing actually the 2022 and opening the new year 2023. And the president message contained numerous things. President speak about forgiveness, reconciliation, and development. President himself acknowledged that there were mistakes which were done before, and he appealed to the citizens and to the leadership and the political class that we should not repeat those mistakes in the year 2023. Kindly, can you give us your perspective on the political angle? What does that statement mean from the president? That we should not repeat the mistakes which we did in the year 2022 in the coming year 2023. Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all audience of this particular conversation. My take is that one, the speech of the president have two ends. It have an end where people see, okay, new messages coming out from His Excellency President, but it have an end where people say, no, it's a usual messages. We'll never see any difference. So I will really tailor my political argument on those two ends. The end that people receive it as a good beginning is for the first time now, President have acknowledged in his close of year speech that some politicians who are selfish, who have a political gain, are the one behind this ongoing deadly and inhuman communal violence in the country. And President have used dialogue, that this dialogue, the concept of dialogue should be used in resolving the problem. That's one thing that President have mentioned very clearly in his speech. People have heard it. But obviously, the next things that comes in the start of the President's speech is, which is a usual task that is expected of him, in line with the agreement, is declaring the signing of the 10 legislations, which was really a dragging of feet since 2018, since the signing of the agreement until now. These laws could have been signed a long time ago, but at least some people appreciate that now we have legal framework, and specifically the legislation on constitutional making process, which is very, very, very critical one. Now, those are things that people pull out of President's speech on the streets of Juba or across the country as a good messages. Things that they pull out as a challenging messages is when President declared year 2023 as a year of forgiveness, reconciliation, and development. Immediately that goes with the declaration he mentioned that Pope Francis with the Archbishop of Canterbury and the moderator of the General Assembly of Church of Scotland are coming to Juba on the 3rd to the 5th of February. They're coming to Juba, which of course everybody wish South Sudanese to see these religious leaders coming. At the same time, it matched with the president declaring year 2023 as a year for forgiveness and reconciliation. But the part that challenged that particular message when the president was saying is suspending the Rome peace process. Because if you look at the coming of the Pope, is an outcome of the kiss of the Pope on the feet of our leaders in Vatican, which lead to assignment of a community of St. Gideon to drive a peace process under the Rome peace process. So I think somehow the message of we are expecting Pope coming with the delegation of the Archbishop of Canterbury and the moderator of Church of Scotland. They're coming to Juba to visit us. We'll give time for them because that the Spirit can bless us. But unfortunately, also in the phase of that, Rome peace process was suspended. So some people are a bit disappointed. Like, what message is it that makes that you welcome the Pope at the same time suspend the Rome peace process? Though we know that Rome peace process is a real process that people are dragging feet. But for me, normally, the question of Rome peace process is a question of political maturity from the parties that sit on the mediation table. It's no longer one party. I think all parties need to demonstrate political maturity in regards to that. That's one area that is mixing. Another consensus on the streets of Juba and across the country is that President is silent on speaking strong language on aspects of corruption. As you're aware that corruption is the biggest issue in the country. So it's only a soft language about, there's the laws that are being enacted and these laws will force the ministries to report. So there's no strong language of acknowledging corruption is a big issue and corruption is contributing in the situation that we're facing now in the country, whether being violence or whatever. So that's something that people also really raised up from the speech of the president politically. The language of forgiveness is a language people have been hearing for the last almost every close of the year speech after signing agreement. That language comes up. But the question is, if forgiveness is taking place, why not us seeing a regain of trust and confidence, specifically between the principal, the president, and his vice president in the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement? Now, the contradictory is that as president say, I forgive. Remember, he forgave during the Christmas prayer in the Cathedral Church of Qatar, but at the same time, also the leadership of the SPLM-IO, if you can see the media, specifically, I think political division say they have nothing to forgive for president. So a bit of like contradictory. As we hear forgiveness from one angle, another angle say, no, we have no problem to forgive. What are the mistakes we have learned from 2022 that president was referring to? One is this continuous armed communal violence that is defeating the state. Actually, the state is losing its constitutional mandate in providing safety and protection for individuals and communities. So in terms of civilian protection, real, as you have mentioned, the incident right from Mogali, you can go to Tonch North, Tonch East, you can come to Mangala, you can go to Gumruk, some parts of Jongole, now in the site of Twitch and Abyei. All those are the mistakes that has happened. The challenge that president have raised, and the Strait of Juba is really waiting to see an answer to it, is that when he says he's going to punish those people who fuel the violence. Of course, the category of people who are avoiding the violence are known. One, the political elites, that he described them as selfish. Two, they are generals in the uniform. Three, we have a new trend of the traditional and spiritual leaders, and especially in the region of Upper Nile, the traditional spiritual leaders that are really mobilizing people to go for these atrocities. So how is he going to punish those? Because some of them are his close friends. And I think the test to His Excellency President, if really meant that he want to punish them, the test is the exercise which was conducted by Vice President Abdul Bagi Ai on the Twitch, Mayardit, and Ngok Dinka. Remember that report? It came with names. And those names are really close allies of the president. Will he punish them? And even if you look at the incident that is happening in Mangala and now what's going on in Gumruk, is that some of the people are known to the president. And today you see Governor Denai Jok, today in Jongole, have said he's going to name those who are falling violent because he knows them. And I think that's the trend to go, is that name and punish them. That's what could have been the solutions. But that's the biggest problem that is happening. While other thing that people feel also very good one, that president have declared that the constitutional making process should roll out by establishing the constitutional drafting committee. But this also have a link with open civic and political space for people to argue. Because remember, the situation we're in now in the country is that if you open constitutional making process, it's going to be a complete political debate issue that is centered around good governance, democratic principles, the type of leadership, the performance of leadership. So some of the arguments are going to be bitter. And my brother Abraham Awuolic is here. You have been in the national dialogue. Remember, in the first stage of the national dialogue, people are doubting it. But when the citizens were given that freedom of expression, they start naming people after that. We are suffering because of XZ. And some of these XZ are powerful people in the system that when they hear their names be named, they need to use the state apparatus to silence the voices. So some of these are the challenges that goes to the speech of the president when president was provided that speech. So the speech is there. But one thing that people have seen as a usual message, and that normally is that far away, the concept of punishing politicians who are falling violence is not new. Remember, for the last 3 years, in the close of the speech he mentioned, and this is normally people are making in Juba with reference to what? One, the presidential order for abolishing people in uniform not to participate in politics. The presidential order on the return of cattle to their land of origin. Those ones are things. Even recently, somebody was reminding me that in 2019, President of our order that he need to see a discipline within the cabinet, but still we have indiscipline. So for me, that is where the challenge that somehow make the speech of the president challenging. So the mistakes of 2022 are the same mistake we have seen in 2021, we have seen in 2020, we have seen in 2019. I think now what president needs to do, which I think for me as a concluding remarks, is that all his aspiration that he have enshrined in the speech, he needs to task certain institutions to take responsibility to translate them. Because to be honest, as we're opening 2023, with this incident in Abyei, with the close of 2022, with 2 incidents, Mangala and Gumruk, it's a challenge to the political leadership of the country in terms of political commitment to assert the constitutional governance and the rule of law, because rule of law is collapsing. And remember, if you look at the history of South Sudan, one of the scenarios you can assess the important rule of law is at the Addis Ababa Agreement. Addis Ababa Agreement was able to survive because the rule of law was strong. Anybody in discipline is there. But now we are having a growing political indiscipline among the political elites. And because we have a highest growth of political indiscipline among the political elites, we are now nurturing and forming government that is indiscipline in various levels of the governments, whether at national, at state, or at local government level. So for me, those are some of the things that are associated with the speech of the president that he need to really take it further. The biggest challenge in the speech of the president is the suspension of the Rome peace process in the face of the visit of these 3 religious leaders. Actually, I saw somebody draw a cartoon, say it's a slap on the face of the Pope when you suspend the peace process and you're welcoming Pope to come. So that's why some of us were saying with respect and with due honor to His Excellency President to open up the Rome peace process so that we see where is the political will and political commitment, because that's the biggest part. And I don't know the drafters of the speech and the advisor speech, why should they allow that to happen? Which that could have not happened because he could have not suspended the Rome peace process while at the same time welcoming the Pope. Initially, he could have welcomed the Pope, and then maybe after welcoming the Pope, he can argue and he can put the case study. But remember, the visit of the Pope, it have a biggest problem with the religion, with the Christian communities all over the world. It's the first exercise in the world that somebody like Pope keys a feet of the political leaders, demanding them to provide peace and stability. And Pope is coming at a moment where there's no peace and stability. And I think also one of the challenges to the speech of the president that, as I said, we're welcoming the Pope. Remember, when the crisis happened in Melaka, deadly and badly and affecting the population, and the Bishop of Melaka was raising the concern, Pope had a special prayer for the situation in Upper Nile. So Pope is coming after he have made a prayer on the particular situation of Upper Nile. Now, as before, Upper Nile could end, Gumuruk merge up, Mangala merge up, now Abyei merge up. So there are incidents that are happening that Pope want to see. So for me, the challenge is that president need to call for a cabinet meeting and instruct relevant institutions to translate those directives that he have enshrined in his speech to be translated. And the period he have is only the month of January, because February is going to be a different political month for the Republic of South Sudan, because with the coming of these religious leaders, whole the international community and the international media is coming here. Actually, what I'm going to say is that from the 15th of this month, the international media start portraying what's going on in South Sudan. And I'm quite sure this incident in Abyei is going to be of an international attention. The incident in Mangala is of international attention. Gumruk is of international attention, because normally media go either 2 weeks or 3 weeks before a such visit and start portraying and interviewing. So for me, the leadership is under challenge. Their first cabinet meeting, which will happen this week, which is, I think, one day from today. Today is on this coming Friday. They need to make a critical decisions in that cabinet meeting to respond to the aspiration and surround the speech of the president, so that at least that will translate to shape an image that give up a better time. But anyway, the weight is not so strong enough of the speech in terms of the reality on the ground. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for unpacking the whole speech in a clear manner. Basically, the issue of Rome peace talk, which President referred to all-out groups, we will talk about it in a good form, because you mentioned it clearly that it was not actually a well decisions or a spell out from the government or from the president's speech by suspending the peace talk while he is preparing the grounds to welcome the Pope. Edmund, before I go to Abraham Awuolic, I really need you to give us what do you think in a minute? What will be the difference? Pope kissed their feet, I think 3 years ago. That was 2018. And now, after 3 years later, no much change has been done. The two leaders or the three leaders which were kissed by the Pope, I still seem to be talking about forgiveness every year, that I have forgiven so and so. Exactly the Pope visit to South Sudan, do you think will have a great impact in that country? Thank you.
Thank you very much. To be honest, the visit of the Pope is a huge political pressure on the members of the presidency. Because as you said, 3 years after the kiss of the Pope on their feet. And remember, Pope have made a very strong reference that you are brothers and sisters. You can disagree, but the disagreements be resolved through dialogue to give peace and stability chance to the citizens that you are leading. Now, assessed, you can use two events to assess the translation of that message. The implementation of revitalized peace agreement. Graduation of unified forces by then was a big issue. Now they're graduated, they're not ready to deploy. And some of them are really, you could have used the unification of the forces as an indicator because the case on the feet require practical indicators that you can say, thank you, Pope, we have translated the spiritual power of your case. We're able to deliver 1, 2, 3. If you come to security arrangements, we have not delivered so much. If you come to political processes, we have just signed the 10 bills, which would have been signed 3 or 4 years ago. If we were to count the timelines, it's going to be there. 4, we could have a high level of confidence and trust among the principals. And one of the indicators you could have seen is that if they could have run rallies across the country, the president, the first vice president who keep forgiving each other, they could have rallied the country and go out to the countrysides and talk to the citizens. Those could have been the indicators. And if we could have reduced communal violence, that's not happening. And remember, Pope is not ignorant that some of this violence that's specific in Upper Nile is happening. Upper Nile really is not a communal violence. Upper Nile is a proxy war of the parties that are signatory to the agreement. It's a clear, everybody knows that that's a proxy war. So Pope is going to question them. Where is the indicator that you have regained trust and confidence? Because Upper Nile shows it clear that proxy war is happening. Then when it comes to Rome peace process, since the day of the case, political maturity was not being demonstrated. So it's going to be pressure on the president and the members of the president, that means president, first vice. In the reception, actually, is going to be very big political pressure. How will they receive? Because the same parade of the reception of the Pope is the same parade when Pope was kissing their feet. Now, look at that image when they stand for the kissing of the feet, which is humble request of Pope. Pope said, I'm requesting humbly, allow me to do. Then Pope walk and kiss their feet, which is first time in the world. And now they're going to receive him. That's going to be a political pressure. So that's why I'm saying the political leadership need to change their political attitudes to demonstrate something. But the challenge that is really going to affect them is the suspension of the Rome peace process, which for me, if I'm to advise president, you cannot contradict that, because that's a big mistake that, how, and remember, it became a challenge. Why? Before the close of the year, the St. Gideon community was here. They came after the suspension of the Rome peace process due to the governors forum, the close of the 6th governors forum. St. Gideon sent a team here. Paulo was here, the head of delegation of the St. Gideon. And Paulo ended up by saying, President have recommit for the dialogue of the Rome peace process to go. So he left Juba with a message that President have give acceptance that the peace talks will continue. And all is there in the media outlets. But now, in the close of the year, which is 1 month for the arrival of the Pope, suspension again. This is really that's a big part of the failure of the speech of the president of the year, which for me is not president's problem. It is the people who advise that language of suspension should continue. For me, that's a big deal. And that is going to give him a pressure in receiving the Pope. Unless if you have to reverse it and make sure when they're reversing it, then you need to reverse before the 15th of January. So for me, those are some of the things that are linked with the speech. So it's not going to make a big difference. The pressure.
Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for that. Up to this juncture, let me move across the line to Awuolic. Abraham, you have listened very keenly to the speech of the president, and we really need you to give us your thoughts in regard to his message on the political aspect, and also whether the speech of the president has really touched the basis of which the normal citizens in Upper Nile, in Equatoria, in Barkazal need to hear, the issue of the economy of the country, because the hyperinflation is uncontrollable now. The issue of corruptions, which my brother Edmund Yakani touched based on, are the issues of security in the countryside, not only in Juba, because we tend to believe that if there is silence of guns in Juba, then there is security everywhere in the country, which is nightmare. Kindly, can you give us your thoughts on that? Thereafter, we move to the issue of Rome, which has really been marked and underlined red as the one which president has really missed hugely. Thank you, Abraham.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Majuk, and appreciate Edmund Yakani's perspective on this issue. First of all, I really think that there was not much to be celebrated in the speech of the president, other than his acknowledgement of the contribution of Comrade John Kong Nyon. Everything else didn't really make a lot of, it's not meaningful to me. And the reason I'm saying this is because I know that the president doesn't believe what he was saying. And let me start with the question of the political side of it. Politically, where is the president right now? The president is facing a challenge of staying in power without consent of the public. And in a month or so, he is going to extend a peace agreement that has largely failed to achieve its objectives. And so, seen from that perspective, the president seemed to have found a formula of keeping power without necessarily going back to people. And so having these agreements that do not work is a perfect formula for him to stay in power without seeking anybody's consent. And so the president did not give any assurance to the people of South Sudan that their power, which is the power to select their leaders, will be returned to them. He broached over the issue and talked about having consented or assented to some bills which should have been assented to so long time ago. And so in that front, the president has not broken any new ground in terms of giving country hope that there is a new political dispensation in the horizon. And so I have nothing to say on that part of the equation. The optic of saying that he has forgiven Riek Machar for having fought him since 1991 really puzzled me. And it is the most dishonest and disgenuine, disingenuous statement that the president has made to begin the year. First of all, what has become of him and Riek Machar? Is it a personal fight or this is a political fight? And if it is a political fight, the question of forgiveness is ambiguous. You really, this is a repeated statement. And those of us who follow the events of South Sudan can document so many times this issue that people have been forgiven. On the 30th of January, 2018, there was that rally held at John Graham Mausoleum when Dr. Riek Machar and all the opposition came to Juba to celebrate the signing of the peace agreement. President Kiir mentioned that he had forgiven these people. And so that was one. And of course, a number of times he mentioned the same. And trying to shape the narrative that the person to be blamed for all the crises in South Sudan, of course, is Riek Machar. I don't agree with that. Totally disagree with that. It is a combination of him, Dr. Riek Machar, and others that have come to create the mess in South Sudan. And you could argue that there was a period of time between 2016, 2017, up to 2018, when Dr. Riek Machar was actually arrested and under detention. And President Kiir was very much in charge of the country on his own. We did not see any major difference in terms of how politics and how business is run in South Sudan. So really it is an old, very tired argument to try to tell us that Dr. Riek Machar is the cause of all the problems in South Sudan. This is false, and it is an argument that must be retired immediately. The president should have, he asked that Dr. Riek Machar should apologize to the country. Actually, the person who needs to apologize to the country is him. He's the president himself, who gave the people of South Sudan the opportunity to dialogue and suddenly closed the book of forgiveness and reconciliation on the face of the people of South Sudan who dialogue by not honoring the resolutions of the South Sudan National Dialogue. So really the whole speech was very hollow, and it was there was nothing meaningful in the statement that the president has made, because he doesn't believe what he was saying, and he doesn't actually act on the things that he is talking about. Let's say forgiveness. If the president wants to forgive people, it is not Dr. Riek Machar that is to be forgiven. There are others who are rotting in jail right now who should have been forgiven. There are others who are not given a space to speak. There is no forgiveness without speaking. People can only reconcile when they are able to speak, and they can actually vomit the bitterness that they are hiding, the anger hiding in them. And after that, now people can forgive and reconcile. And so when the president said that we need to make this year a year of peace and reconciliation and forgiveness and dialogue, all of those statements don't mean anything, because the president doesn't really mean them. We don't want to hear those things being mentioned in the speeches. We want actions. We want the president to take action to demonstrate that he is actually forgiving people. So that is one side. On the economic side, of course, the president did not say much. It is not enough to say that you have cleared the arrears. So that should not be a policy of a government at all, to have arrears. And so it is given a private company or even at your house, you don't have arrears. You cannot say that your children will eat in arrears. That is basically what this issue of arrears has been. You cannot let your children go for a week or 7 days or a month without eating, and then you say you are now clearing their arrears. That doesn't apply. So clearing of the arrears is simply a demonstration of failure. The president should have told us that there is a new economic policy that will grow the economy, project the growth to a certain percentage, project the number of jobs that are to be created, and demonstrate the number of projects that the government will undertake that will show that there is going to be economic growth. So to come to tell the whole country that you are clearing the arrears and that is now your economic policy is very saddening. It doesn't really give any assurance to the economy or to the regular citizens that the economy is going to be better. So really, the economic team has failed the president on that front. They did not give citizens anything of substance, and it was very shallow and really not well thought of. You don't tell hungry people that you have cleared the arrears. Yes, you clear the arrears of government employees. What about those who are not working for the government and they rely on the economy? What have you given them? Nothing. He did not address the issue of the pre-sale of oil, which has been rumored so many times that the oil has been sold for so long. He did not address the issue of loans, that loans are being taken, sovereign loans, and we have seen recently $42,000 having been squandered by government employees, by government officials, and nothing was addressed in that kind of a nature. So really, the economic side of it, both the plan to grow the economy, to create jobs, to improve the currency, and to relieve the economic burden and to bring down prices, nothing was addressed on that front. The second aspect of the economy, of course, is the management of resources. There was nothing said about the revenue being collected, how it is being managed, and how the oil proceeds are being managed, and how the corruption is going to be tackled to make sure that that money is going toward economic growth. And the government was silent on that. President was silent on it. And so there was nothing substantive on the economic side. Now on the security, I was amazed by the way the president using a term now that is being coined deliberately to divert attention, that there is something called subnational violence. What is that? That is a very vague and very misleading statement. There is no such thing as subnational violence. There is violence. And that violence is being perpetrated by armed groups, whether state security agencies or militias. This has nothing to do with subnational violence. Subnational violence is a term that should not be used in South Sudan. What is being fought in Abyei, in Twitch, in the Sholo Kingdom, in Pibor, and all the other places, including Warab, is all political. It is a political violence, and we know that the reports have come out of what is going on in Warab right now. It is basically a duel of political leaders sitting in Juba fighting for control of the population. We know that the report has come out of the deadly violence that took place in Tumbra. It was fueled by the political leaders. And clearly the deputy governor, who is an SPLM, is actually behind the incidents that took place in Tumbra, between the Zande and the Balanda, communities that have lived peacefully for so long. And so basically, it is a mischaracterization of the events. Actually, the RRCs has actually decentralized violence, just as it has decentralized. Power has been centralized, but violence has been decentralized. So fighting for control of political power in Juba is now being fought in the counties, in the Payams and in the Bomas and in the states. And so let no one lie to the people of South Sudan that there is something called subnational violence. There is no such thing. What we have is political violence perpetuated by political elite sitting in Juba. And Edmund Yakani was completely right. That is basically what it is. And President Kiir knows this. Dr. Riek Machar knows this. Hussein Abdel Baghi and all of them, all the vice presidents, they know this. The generals sitting in Juba are aware of this. How do civilians get RPGs? How do they get mounted vehicles with heavy machine guns? How do they get PKMs and ammunition? How do they get that? So really, the president made an excuse that there are some greedy people who are creating violence in South Sudan. Little does he know, or he probably knows, but of course he wants to deflect. The fact that his policies of seeking to maintain power are driving all this violence is something that should be made known to the president, that he is, because of his desire to stay long in power, and because he has lost control of the population, he is now using those localized violence episodes to project power and to keep himself, to perpetuate his rule. This is the bottom line. This is the bottom line of what is going on. And so really, I want to caution the media, both international and local media, that the term subnational violence is to be rejected. There is no such thing as subnational violence. You are basically trying to get the government off the hook by saying that, oh, no, we are not responsible for that. It is a local violence. No. First of all, there are two failures. The first failure is that the government created this violence when they are supposed to keep internal cohesion within the country. The government and the armed groups are equal. They are creating these violent episodes. Number two, even if it is not the government creating these violent episodes, it is the responsibility of the government to stop that violence. So if you are not able to control that violence, and you sit in Juba and you say, oh, it is a local violence, which government in which country is ever proud of having violence happening somewhere local and that they are not responsible for? In some countries, even an incident of a school shooting or an incident taking place in a church or in a nightclub is taken seriously as a challenge to the state, and the government would definitely intervene to make sure that these events don't happen. So the fact that violence is happening everywhere in the country, on the countryside, and the whole population, let's say the whole of Shello Kingdom, has been displaced, and somehow you think that it is not your problem, it is some local issue, and that somehow it is you are not supposed to be responsible for that. That is not acceptable. And so I think that the president, instead of threatening people that there are some people sitting somewhere in the bush who are causing all of this, he should know that the weapons that are used and the ammunition that are used to fight those local conflicts actually are taken from Juba to those places by men that are claiming to be protecting him and his government. This is the truth of the matter in South Sudan. And so the president really didn't say much on the security. He has not come up with a plan on how to address that insecurity. And of course, his claim to have suspended the Rome peace process is actually also not accurate. we need to be clear on some items here. First of all, the groups that are involved in the Rome process have communicated to Senegidio and to the government that they are no longer interested in the process of in the Rome process, partly because the Rome process was initiated to try to bring on board parties that did not sign the revitalized peace agreement. But as we all know, the revitalized peace agreement is coming to an end. It came to an end last month. The election was supposed to have taken place in December, this past month, and that we should have a new government by the 20th or 22nd of February. But the parties instead decided to extend the agreement. And so the parties that are involved, and this is up to the journalists to figure it out, they are saying that the agreement has ended. The agreement that the government and the negotiators want us to join, it has ended. And now they have signed a new agreement called Roadmap. So which agreement now do they have to join? Is it the Roadmap or is it the RRCs? So they have actually come forward and said, what we want now is what we call the roundtable conference. We have forgone the question of having a peace agreement being joined through the Rome process. And now they want the roundtable conference so that there is a new agreement for a transition beyond the peace agreement, which is coming to an end. And so instead of the president telling the people of South Sudan that these groups have been violating the peace agreement, he should tell the people that no, the reason they suspended the talks is not because there are violations. It is because there is a new reality in Rome, that the agreement has come to an end and the parties are not willing to accept the extension of that agreement. And if the government wants to continue to engage with them, they will engage through to those parties through the roundtable conference. This is where the matter is. And people need to be transparent and honest about it. So I want to leave it at that. And maybe my last point, because of time, is on the issue of the visit of Pope. I honestly think that I'm not excited that Pope Francis should come to Juba because he should have only come to celebrate a breakthrough when he called South Sudanese leaders to forgive each other and to work for peace and for unity. And he gave them a Bible with a statement written saying that do that unites and forgo that which divides. So the parties did not live up to this. They have dragged their feet. Violence continues, and I really don't know what Pope Francis is going to achieve politically. He's not going to change the minds of these men who actually do not believe in God. We have to be honest. They all claim that they are Christians, but they have not shown anything about their faith. I don't want to go there so deep, because if they did believe in God and in what Pope Francis stands for, they should have left Vatican on that day on the same plane, land in Juba, go to church, pray, and ask for forgiveness, and go around the country telling people to forget about war, and now let us go for peace. That violence happening around the country would not have been occurring by now if they were all committed to that. And so I'm not excited at all that the bishop should come. But should he come with the other bishops, if I were the president, I would initiate new things. I would go for the roundtable conference and actually declare that that he is seeking a new political dispensation in South Sudan. That would be more meaningful. Even saying that there is a need for the Rome initiative to be continued will not be enough. That would just be a statement. It is an action that will indicate that there is a new political dispensation in South Sudan that would be sufficient to what Pope Francis did to them. That would be the equivalent of what Pope Francis did to them in kissing their feet. Anything short of that would be would not gain traction. It will only make things worse for South Sudan, because South Sudan will be on a magnifying glass and everything in there will be seen and no progress will be seen. And I wouldn't be surprised if the suffering of the people of South Sudan is going to increase, because the religious leaders would feel that they have not been listened to. And I don't know what the consequence of that would be. So let me stop there. In summary, I want to say that I did not hear anything new from the president, and I did not see from his body language sincerity and seriousness in what he was saying. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abraham Awuolic, for your perspective in regard to the president's speech in terms of economy of the country, security-wide, politically, and the visit of Pope Francis to our republic, and also the issue of Rome. Before I go back to the clubhouse audience, maybe to pose some questions, there is one thing that we really need you to make clarification on it, the issue of Rome initiative. Are you saying, Abraham, Rome initiative is no longer breathing?
Well, I would say that those who are involved in the process should be in a better position to answer this. But from what I know, based on my conversation with them and based on the statements that they have made, they are looking for the roundtable conference. And they said that the Rome process has come to an end because its objective was to bring the parties that did not sign the RRCs into the agreement. But the agreement's time period has ended, and they don't agree with the extension, and they don't agree with the roadmap, and therefore they think, and this is from my knowledge, they think that and I cannot speak for them, what I'm saying is my opinion. What they are thinking is now that the RRCs has failed, and the roadmap adds no value to it. So the next best thing to save the country and to bring peace is to have a roundtable conference. I think that is what they believe. We also believe in the roundtable conference, and so for the president to say that he has suspended the Rome process, it is vague, because what was communicated to the government and to the Senegidio was that we are no longer pursuing that. Let us start a new chapter through the roundtable. That's what I thought it is, but I want you to follow up that with the non-signatories. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that clarification, Abraham. It's good sometimes to get things straight, and at least now you have said it right. The people which were involved in Rome initiative will be the right people to exactly give what happened and what transpired. But the last question is, President said he suspended the peace talk, the Rome peace talk, simply because some of these all-out groups have been continuously destabilizing the country. Do you believe, Abraham, these all-out groups are the one? Is the government trying to blame them on what happened in Malacan between Chiluk, between Johnson Olony and Simon Gadwich? Do you believe President is blaming them on what transpired in Gumruk, especially in Pibor administrative area, or what destabilization is the government trying to tell us as a citizen? Thank you.
Well, that's why I'm saying that it is the statement is disingenuous and it's not true because Johnson Olony and Gadwijdual who are involved with the incidents in Malakal have signed an agreement called the Kitgwang Agreement with the government. So they are part of the government and they have an agreement separate from the Rome Initiative. Many of you know this happened in February last year, that Kitgwang signed an agreement with the government and they have agreed to unify their forces. And so so it is a separate group. The group that are non-signatories to the Rome are Paul Malong, these are Pagana Mom, these are Thomas Shirilo, and few others. And so really, the major incidents, insecurity incidents that took place within the country have nothing to do with those guys. So the president need to suspend his peace agreement with the Kitgwang factions rather than with the guys involved in the Rome process. And furthermore, the stabilization, the instability in the country, in Abyei and in Twitch and in Warab have nothing to do with the guys in Rome. These are mainly people within the government wearing government uniforms and ranks, and also constitutional post holders jostling for position and power in those places. And so really there is some it is not, the president is not being truthful here in making that accusation. What I'm telling you actually is the truth. There is no Rome process. Those guys are saying the agreement has come to an end, and therefore, instead of negotiating for us to join an agreement whose life has run out, why don't we have a roundtable conference? And maybe the last point I want to make, the whole purpose for negotiating with these people in the first place was that they were creating problems, right? And so it doesn't make sense to say that you want to suspend talks with people that you don't have problem with. They have to have problem with you in the first place, so that that's why you are talking to them. And so really there is something that is unclear on the side of the president and those who made the statement. These guys they have fallen out with the government. They have been fighting. Nas has been fighting them. Paul Malonga has fallen out with them. They did not really have a long fight, but they have been clashing once in a while. And those of Pagana Mom have been having political issues. He doesn't have an army and all of that. So these people really have a problem with the government, and that's why they have been negotiating. And so it doesn't make sense even for the government to say, these guys have been creating problems and therefore we are suspending talks with them. So there has to be, there is a lot more in this. And I would say that you should follow up with the government to make clarification on this type of statements, vague statements that do not seem to make sense. What is required, if the president is to mean, if the words of the president are to mean anything, is that the whole country needs to talk. And we need to talk about a transition in which the president has to exit power. Is continuing to stay in power is the basis of instability. And Edmund Yakani has exited, but he has said earlier that the whole government has become indisciplined. This is a form of resistance. This is a form of rebellion. People are rebelling against the system. People are not happy with what is going on. Look at what's happened after people were accused of having squandered $42 million. The whole document, the whole government documentation from the central bank, from revenue authority, from the Ministry of Finance, from office of president was dumped on the social media. Who is keeping those records? Is it are those people in Rome? Those are guys who are in the Rome process? Or are those people PCCA or other people who are considered to be enemies of the state? No, these are government officials keeping those records, signing those papers. And when there are issues, they dump them in the social media. Why? They are rebelling. They are unhappy. The whole system is rebelling against the president because people are not happy. And one of the things that I have actually failed to mention earlier, and I'm glad there is an SPLM member in the clubhouse, the recent SPLM reform, or however you want to call it, is a disaster. First of all, the SPLM constitution is clear. You need a convention to elect leaders. But these men sit in Juba and elected themselves, gave them powers, and distributed powers like a piece of cake. When they should have gone to the bomas, to the payams, to the counties, and to the states to elect people to the convention who will then come and elect their leaders. So the recent SPLM decision to form a new leadership, elect a new secretary and deputies and all of that is a disaster. It is the same continuation of trying to have power without consent, trying to have power that has no backup, that has no public support. And these are the things that, and some people who are duly elected in their bomas and their payams and counties have been left out of the SPLM. So when you have processes like this, like the recent SPLM reforms, what they are communicating to all of us is that the system is unwilling to change. They are going backward. They are going backward. They are not moving forward in terms of creating a democratic culture. And so I'm really disappointed of what happened. The recent events, while they are being celebrated by some people, there is nothing to be celebrated. They are actually taking the country backward in terms of building a democratic culture. We are becoming autocratic everywhere. And this must be discouraged, and this must be opposed. And I'm glad that the people of South Sudan have found many ways of opposing this system. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Abraham. I will yield it back to Abraham Adit to invite our audience and some of the speakers on the podium there on Clubhouse also to give us their perspective in regard to the president's speech in order to know exactly what the president meant and what is the theme of his message as we are moving toward completing our new year 2023. Yeah, Abraham Adit, I yield it back to you.
Thank you, Majok. Let me give this chance to Manon. Manon is the chairperson of SPLM chapter in the United States. So he will be talking on behalf of SPLM. And he will respond. So for those of you who are watching in Facebook, YouTube, and Clubhouse, so we bring three gentlemen, Manon, who represent the part of SPLM. Awuolic is a member of PCCA, and Usas Edmund Yakani, that you all know, is one of the member of and a CEO of CEPO. So Edmund will come back in 15 minutes from now, but so he's have other issues to attend. So Comrade Manon, so it's your turn now to respond and to make your statement. So if you can hear me, open your mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Meritz and Lake Media again. And also I greet the guests and the rest of the idiots with the social media or here in Clubhouse. I greet you all. First of all, I have to greet everyone for the New Year 2023. Sudan prospers and progress. That's what we are wishing for. Attached to the theme of the reason the president of this year is for reconciliation, forgiveness, and development. I think it is very starting year for all of us, and we are wishing for the best for our country. Coming to the speech of President, which is delivered of the eve of the December 31st, as we know, we have an opposition in South Sudan who never will appreciate anything at all, no matter how progress, no matter how inches development in the country, they will turn around and opposing it. And that's why we look, our opposition always will be look like just they are there just to oppose anything, just for the sake of being opposing, but not making reasoning. Otherwise, the speech of President was the best ever speech. I listened to it keenly and we analyzed it. First of all, there's a lot of progress that President talked about it, especially the arms agreement, the implementation of the peace agreements is progressing, because if the national parliaments, and here I have to congratulate the all members of National Legislative Assembly of our country for putting the country above the party interests. And this is showing that passing 10 bills with the current national unity governments came as a result of arms. And, it's showing that they are collaborating. They are collaborating in national parliament for the sake of resolving issues concern our citizens in the country. So the 10 bills, majority of them are actually part of reform, and they are part of the arms agreements. If you look for those bills, are so important, whether a constitutional making process act, which is actually will allow the government to form the committee for the constitution developments in the country, which is actually will end the current government of transitional government into national election in the country. It's so important, these bills, and it should be acknowledged if there is really opposition there to acknowledge things. Political party acts, which is people are talking about the political space, and everyone have to organize his political party and be prepared for the upcoming election, whether 2024 or 2025 in the end of the transitional government. Is very important. That bills and financial acts 2022 also is one of the vital bills, because it's going to governing the finance and actually the cluster of economic cluster, which actually under 11 ministerial is going to guide how our finance is going to be managed. So all these bills are actually there are importance, and they are a policy. And when they become a policy, it is the whole agency in the government, an institution in the government, to carry and put them into practice, into actual action to be implemented. But the bills are there to serve the interest of reform in the country, and I think we have to appreciate it and we have to acknowledge it. Coming to the issue of sub-national crisis in the country, I heard people are saying they should not be called sub-national. I don't know. They want everything in the country to be called rebellion. We are aware. We are aware of those conflicts. We are aware whether the conflict between Peter or BA have nothing to do with the politics. It's just a dispute of local boundaries. Actually, this government actually is doing its effort to resolve it, but it's out of control due to the encouragement or elements of opposition maybe interfere in that to fuel the violence and see that the country is all set into the fire. We have also witnessed the recent incident in Shulu Kingdom. It was a youth zone where actually we are retaliating based on what they claimed an attack from Johnson Willing into their areas. That was a retaliation we have seen, and those are civilians. So I don't know for people like Ustaz Abram how you call it that when the civilians are fighting among themselves, and you want to call it rebellion, or you want to call it what? I have no idea. Those are sub-national, those are communal conflicts, whether for the cattle raiding or other things that we witness in the country. And the reason for all this is go back to the opposition in the country, who are actually fueling the fire in the country, who are actually sure that the South Sudan have no peace, and South Sudan should have no rest, and instead of South Sudan should continue to suffering. Even though we have a peace in the country, this is not their business. Their business is regime change agenda, which is actually that we know it all. And he made it clear that that's what people like PCCA, That's why they are working in what so-called uprising to overthrow the government that came as a result of resolution of conflict, a government that came as a result of the peace agreement, in order for the transitionalist government to reform, to make some reform in the country, and then people go back to the people of South Sudan to take the power back to them, so they can choose their leaders and have a per se on their country, how they want their country to be governing. So I think that those are sub-national conflicts. There's no other way we can describe them. Actually, the issue of the Rome that actually is raised here, why the Rome talk was actually suspended by the government. We are aware, we are aware that there is the situation of hostility between the governments, and there is also a declaration of principle in Rome, and nevertheless, we have seen lack of came out in July last year, 2022, Clubhouse, opposing the government that actually is negotiating with them, which is the National Unity Government. They are opposing the extension of the agreements. They are opposing the roadmap that actually was laid out by the parties to the agreements, and they try to give what they don't have. You cannot give what you don't have. They are not part of, they call themselves non-signatories before that, when they came out with their statement here. So who are they to reject the extension as long as the parties to the agreement choose the peace rather than violence? And they came out with the roadmap, and they came out with the extension, because the extension is necessary due to the bill that actually now enacted by the government, including the constitution making process. How are we going to go for election if we cannot wrote the constitution, and it's a part of the Access Agreement? I think Riek Machar himself speaks volumes himself that the extension was not a one-party action; it was a collective action by all political party group within the national unity government. And the reason actually for extension of 24 months is the process that will take for us actually to for the constitution development process to be complete in the end of the current national unity government 2024-2025. So I believe that they are the one who actually behave and lack of seriousness, and they came out into introducing the different agenda, which is the so-called round table, which before even they introduced the agenda into mediators in Rome, so the mediators can represent the new proposal of so-called round table, and then they came up, they want to form the exile governments and the government so-called autocratic government, and expensive of the current national unity government. So see, there's no logic here, and I think that's the reason, and the president made it clear in his speech, that the lack of seriousness and also destabilize security in the country, and at the same time they want to be in the top with the government. You cannot serve two masters. If you want to choose the value of the violence, then it is up to you. If you want to negotiate, then you have to show the interest of being serious about the negotiation in the peace in the Rome. And we have seen this is not happening at all. We have seen the same group actually meeting with some militias, people like Gerwich and other people like Stephen Boy. Yeah, they want to mobilize them. We're seeing some elements of the same group that are talking now that they are serious about peace. They are mobilizing the force and militias to join them and launch operation against the government. We saw all these things. Nevertheless, people are saying that the president should not suspend. I think the president is willing for the peace and is ready for the peace. And the reason that he said let's suspend the Rome talk is temporarily, as long as they change their attitude and they become seriousness. I think the government will be willing to return back to the Romes and talk with them. But they have to show the interest, and they have to go back to principle of declaration of Rome rather than coming up with a different agenda that actually was not a part of negotiation and it's not a part of the principle of declaration of the Rome talk. And I think that's the reason that the peace was suspended. For the visit of holy leaders to our country, I think it's a blessing for all of us, and their coming will address some issue in the country. And I think there's nobody actually have the power to measure whether we are faithful, we are religious to God or not. It is only God is something that you actually belong to individual. Whether I'm faithful or I'm not faithful, it is up to the God to decide, not to the human to measure my faithfulness or not faithfulness. So we don't have actually to go to that level. I believe that President Kiir is a man of the God, and always is man of faithful, and he have his own way, privacy of having a relationship of communication with the God, and nobody can determine whether he's faithful or not faithful. Coming to the issue of the question that was asked about the SPLM recently, Extraordinary National Convention. I think the Extraordinary Convention was a result of the ARCES agreement in 2015, where the SPLM was signed, the three factors signed, unified the SPLM, a group of G10, the SPLM in the government, and the IO. And that agreement did not actually be implemented due to the Bagana Mom went in and then he walked out. He was sworn in as a Secretary General and then he left. And then the party became actually hold hostage for the whole this year, waiting to implement the Arusha agreement. So in October, they first stopped. The political bureau actually decided to suspend Kamariak Mashar and Bagana Mom because they form a different organization. And Article 10 in the SPLM Constitution made it clear: if you left the party and you form a different organization, then you should be suspended. Therefore, the leadership also, President Chair of the party, was given the power to reconstitute and restructure the SPLM. And I think the last December or the early December Extraordinary Convention in Juba was a part of reorganizing the SPLM and reconstitute the SPLM structure in terms of political bureau, in terms of the National Liberation Council, and prepare the party democratically for this year, which is we're going to have a national convention of the SPLM, where is going to start from the grassroots by the congresses in our Payam, in our Buma, in our county, and up in Juba in national convention, where the whole leaders of the SPLM, political bureau or the National Liberation Council will be re-elected from the congresses, and then the National Liberation will elect the political bureau and the president and the structuralists. So I think it is just routine business within the party, and people should not just take it as advantage, criticize the SPLM that we are not democratic. I think the SPLM believe in democracy, and we believe in multi-political party, and I think it's normal routine process, and the convention will prove this year when the convention is called and everything is done in the way it's supposed to go. I think people will see that result. So what I can say here, to conclude my input here, I guess will congratulate the president. The speech actually was calling for the peace in the country, and the speech addressed challenges that we are facing in our country, and most important is reconciliation and forgiveness and development. Therefore, people like Awuolic and the rest of the people who are still opposing, it is a time for you to go home. Political party acts is already been signaled by the president, and I think any organization have any political view in our country and develop our country, restore the peace collectively to our country. I think it's a collective responsibility for all of us as a citizen of South Sudan. And let us make the year of 2023 a year of peace and reconciliation and forgiveness for all of us, and let us move forward to develop our nation. And in the end of the current national unity government, where the election have to be free and fair, where our people have to be given an opportunity to select or vote for the leader at the state level, at the county level, at the state level, at national level. And this is exactly what people of South Sudan wanted. And enough is enough. We oppose enough as we can oppose, and we destroy enough as we can destroy. It is a time for us to build rather than continue creating violence and insecurity across the country. I will yield it back to you, Brother Medit, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Comrade Manon. The next speaker will have a question to Abraham Awuolic. Abraham Awuolic, if you can hear me, you can put down the note so that you can answer those questions. So yes. Let me hear this microphone back to Brother Moranyari. If you can hear my voice, you can open your mic now.
Yeah, before that, Abraham, sorry.
Yeah.
I received a question here from Tilo.
Yeah.
Let me just read it less than a minute to Abraham Awuolic to note it down. Then we'll give the floor to Wal.
Okay, it's up here actually. It's right there.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I have seen the statement.
Yeah, okay. There's two questions actually in the comment sections coming. One is from Attilo, and the other one is from Peter. So those are the two questions in on comment section. So if you can write those down, that's fine. Okay. So go ahead, Well.
Yes, thank you so much, Abraham. I greet the Lagos State media listeners, viewers in Facebook and in YouTube, and I greet you, Brother Awuolic, and I really appreciate you for making yourself available to have this conversation with us. As people of South Sudan, we are confused, and by making it to social media, to have certain issues discussed and cleared out, I think it helps us a lot. One of my questions is there in the chat room. I don't know if you have access to the chat Awuolic. Otherwise, I can actually read out here. And it goes like this. Awuolic, you and those of the non-signatories are advocating for roundtable talk. In my opinion, there is nothing wrong with talking. I think talking is cheaper and easier than fighting. So if we can resolve our issues through talking, it would be very, very helpful. But the thing is, Awuolic, as a citizen of South Sudan, we have seen many talkings, especially since 2013. Even what led to the conflict in our country was a failure of talking. It was a failure of roundtable. And after that, several attempts had been made in order to give the warring parties chance to get around the table and talk. And many of you, whether in opposition or in government, did that. You've been to Addis Ababa several times and you had talked with the government. And there had been even a Arusha agreement. And then there had been Rome peace talk. And the same actors are the ones who had been there in those peace talks. And now the same actors are the ones who are coming to us here and are telling us that all those agreements were bad. What is good for the people of South Sudan is a round table talk. What is going to be new here, Awuolic? What is going to be new? But the same people who even failed as leaders of the SPLM and put the country through the war are the same people who went to Addis Ababa to have the peace talk. And these are the same people who want the round table talk now. So what is going to be a new ingredient in this? Mind you that even those agreements had some grantors. There were grantors of those agreements. What is it here that would give me a confidence that indeed the round table that you folks are advocating for is going to be successful, given the fact that the same actors are going to be at the round table talk, and there will be even no grantors. Nobody will guarantee the outcome of the round table talks. So what is it? How can you make me become confident that the round table talk is indeed the magic bullet that can bring peace into the country? Because the way I look at here, it looks like it's a distraction. Mind you that the same mouths that talk about the round table talk are the same mouths that are actually fueling the hostile atmosphere between South Sudanese people. The same group of people who are calling for and advocating for the round table talk, they're also fueling the conflict in our country. The languages that come from them The languages that we hear are not language that we expect from somebody advocating for the peace talk or the round table talk. So what is it here that will give us that confidence? Second to that, many of you, including Edmund Yakani and Rajab Mohandis, on behalf of the civil society, are signatures to the compromise peace agreement. I see where Edmund signed, and I see where Rajab Mohandis signed, and many other civil society organizations. Okay, and also the other grantors. Okay, when they signed this agreement, because they witnessed the agreement and they put their signatures in there. The same agreement here, almost to the end of it in chapter 8, particularly chapter 8, article 8.3 to article 8.4, it gives the parties to the agreement exclusive right to extend themselves, even to extend themselves, and even in unlimited times. Even how many times they can extend the Arkigano is not even specified. And those are Rajab Mohandis, I see him, he's in the room here with us, and Edmund Yakani, you guys witnessed that agreement, you read it, and you signed it. And now you come here, and then you want to condemn the extension of the government. Why did you sign it in the first place when the article give SPLM, IG, SPLM, IO, and the other political parties, or all those who were involved in the conflict, it gave them exclusive right to extend themselves? Are you telling us that you didn't read the agreement, or did you just betray people of South Sudan? And with you putting your signature on an agreement that gives the Archigan every right to extend itself, why would I have faith in you now that the new advocacy for the round table talk, you really mean something? Are you not really giving us false hope? From here, I'll stop, which you have in you with your family, brother Abraham Awuolic, Medit, and all the listeners of Lake State Media. Thank you. Medit, you can take the mic.
Okay, thank you, Brother Wal. Now we'll yell the microphone back to studio, Majong Makur. Now you can take over.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much to our speakers on Clubhouse, the chairperson of SPLM chapter, Manon Joka Leo, Attilo, and Walmar Anyar. Thank you for your view and for your perspective in regard to the topic at hand. We will yield it back to Abraham Awuolic because most of the questions were directed to you to answer them in summary. And then we are glad Edmund Yakani is back. We will also wait in before we end our show. Abraham, you can take the lead now.
Thank you very much, Brother Majok Makur. And I want to appreciate the chairman of SPLM chapter in the United States, Brother Manon. I appreciate his comments, and he did his job to defend his party, which is acceptable. It is good. I have only a few things to respond to. First, the assertion from Brother Manon that the bills that the president signed show a sign of progress, of an agreement being implemented and reforms being carried out. That is correct. The whole idea of having to rewrite those laws was to bring about reform. And the whole reason you wanted to bring about reforms was so that you could have an election in December 2022. Now, the president signed these bills in December 2022 or in January 2023, 4 years after the whole agreement period has elapsed, and you want me to celebrate that and clap my hands to the president? this is a political process, and we are mature, we are intelligent, we read between the lines of what people are doing. You don't reform. All reforms have timelines. You don't wait and after 50 years and you say, okay, now I have agreed to reform. This means you are not serious. And so that is the basis upon which we are unhappy with the process, because the delay is unjustified. There was no basis for delaying until now. And of course, there is no political space, even though the Political Parties Act has been signed. There is no political space in South Sudan. Even for 5 people to meet in Juba now, you need to go to national security to get your to get a clearance, and nobody can hold political rallies. And you have seen the incidents of the SPLM IO being given a lot of hard time in Warab, and not in Warab, in Awil and other places. And the commissioner of Yerul West is now in jail representing SPLM IO. So really, there is no political space in South Sudan at the moment, and that is a violation of the peace agreement itself. And so, so really, there is nothing to be celebrated about the president ascending to laws that have come way after the peace agreement period has elapsed. There is nothing to celebrate about that. On the issue of the violence at the local level, Brother Manon, you live here in the United States, and you know that there are no communal violence. You know, yes, there are incidents of insecurity. There are individuals who buy their own guns and they go shoot people. And you know how the government responds to those. The government doesn't say this is a problem with Northern Virginia or with West Virginia or with it is a crisis. It is considered a crisis. And so when you are having violence anywhere in the country, that is violence, and it calls into question the capacity of the government to address such incidences. Every country has crimes. There are people who commit crimes. You cannot stop those people. And that is not what we are talking about. But when about 20,000, 30,000 people mobilize themselves and they march across to go and attack another community, and the government cannot stop that, it is either the government should admit that it has failed, it has no capacity to control those things, to which its legitimacy must be questioned, or it must be that the government itself is responsible for taking those actions. So there is no defense here. There is nothing you can defend about this. There is no way in any country where thousands of people would mobilize themselves, march across to go and rob or loot or kill another community. And so really, that is not. We should not debate what the term should be. What I don't want is for the national government to think that somehow these are things that are happening very far away and therefore they don't matter, and that it is not its responsibility. That's why I don't want this term called subnational violence. There is nothing subnational about it. This is a national crisis. Just because it is happening in a certain location doesn't mean that it is a local issue. These are all part of a failure of a system. And no government should be proud to say that, oh, you know, people fight in this area, but in our capital city, everything is okay. That means we are in charge. I think that is really naive and it's shameful that the government should be thinking like that. The government must take responsibility for what is happening on the countryside and must control the security and internal cohesion. Now, the question of why are people opposed to the extension, especially people who did not sign the agreement. Well, let me tell you why that would be the case. We are people of South Sudan. Whether we have signed a peace agreement or we have not, the consequences of what the agreement does affect all of us. And the country does not belong to those who signed the peace agreement. The country belongs to us. And so if you are not doing what you said you were going to do in that peace agreement, we are entitled to say, in that case, then this agreement that you said, that you promised, it was a promise they made. The parties made a promise to the people of South Sudan that we are not going to fight, we will bring peace, and we are going to go back to democracy. We have not seen that. Have we seen democracy? It's been 4 years. We have not seen peace. We have not seen economic development. So what is the value of this peace agreement? What is the value of this peace agreement if it has not bring peace, and it has not brought peace, it has not brought political stability and democracy, and it has not brought economic prosperity? Why should we keep it? Why should we keep it? And we are not saying we cannot keep the peace agreement and therefore let us go to fighting. We are saying let us talk again. And this goes to the question of my brother Peter Rual Moranyar. I really think that you really need to reflect on what you have just asked me. So you are saying these people have been talking and nothing has improved, and therefore we should do what? We should not talk anymore? Well, the reason people have to talk is because we are saying the peace agreement that you have signed has not been followed the way it was agreed to. There has been failure everywhere. And violence continues in the country. Economic hardship continues. Political failure continues. Democracy remains constrained. So in that situation, what do? You keep quiet and let the events take their course, and you behave as if the country is not yours and you don't care? Or do you fight? Or do you say, okay, if this thing has not worked, let us go back and talk again? I think that is the basis of why people are saying, let us go back to talk. And let me tell you, there is one constant thing here. The 2015 peace agreement did not work because President Key didn't want it to work. And that is why it failed. Okay? It is not the failure of those who talk or those who mediated the talk. It is the failure of those who are charged with the responsibility to govern the country. And so those who talk didn't write anything violent in the peace agreement. They wrote peace. But because it has failed to be implemented and people fought in J1, and I'm waiting for you and anyone else to tell me what happened on that day, why there was fighting in J1, and why they let Riek Machar go and they did not detain him if he was the culprit of that fight. And then later on, a war was declared against Riek Machar and others. That is what created NAS, when war was taken to the people of Equatoria and their villages were destroyed. That was not a result of talking. It was a result of a political action taken by somebody who is responsible, who has the power to make such decisions. And so talking is not the problem. There is one constant, and the constant is that President Salva Kiir remains the president. And all these things happen under him. And the same thing with the national dialogue. The president himself went to the parliament on the 14th of December 2016 to declare the national dialogue. He outlined his objectives: people dialogue and talked, came out with the results. Are you going to tell me that those who spoke in the villages and in the towns and in Juba were wrong to speak? And that it was because they spoke, that's why the national dialogue resolutions were not implemented? No. And that is part of the reason we want to talk, is to say what people say during the national dialogue is right. Let us implement it. But as long as the president remains the same and he is unwilling to move forward, to move the country forward, then you are right. Even the roundtable conference will also fail. And so one part of your question is correct, that the actors are the same, and therefore whatever may come out may also fail. But then we have to look at the alternative. If we are not talking and the peace agreement that has already been signed is not working, and violence continues in the country and economic hardship continue to continue to deteriorate, what do you project will happen to the country if we remain silent and there is no talking? What do you project the country will be? So I want to finalize it by saying that you have mentioned that the agreement has given the parties unlimited times to extend themselves in power, or to extend the agreement. And that is, and you are questioning whether those who signed the agreement were reading it or they didn't read it. I think that question is not sincere, because the agreement was signed with certain provisions which were intended to achieve certain objectives. If those objectives are not being achieved by those who are given the responsibility and the power, it is not everyone that has the power in South Sudan. I cannot make a decree today and say, okay, I want the unified forces to be deployed. I don't have that power. There is only one person who can do that, and that is the president. So these people have tried to push for those provisions in the agreement to be implemented, and the parties have refused. And when the time came, they decided to extend the period. Don't you think that this is a self-service? They want to keep they want to keep undemocratic power. They want to keep power that is given to them by the constitution, by the agreement, but not the power given to them by the people of South Sudan. Did the people of South Sudan give them power to sign that agreement? Didn't they create the conflict themselves, negotiated the peace agreement themselves, and sign a power sharing agreement? And so should we stop being citizens now to question things? I think that's how I would end here, is to say that our job as citizens is to look at what our government said and what they are doing. If they are not matching, we have to question. We have to rise up. We have to say, no, we don't want to accept this. We cannot take this. We are not happy with this. We need change. We need new direction. I think that is what citizenship means. Citizenship doesn't mean that we should be passive, just consume whatever we are given, without critically looking at what the future is going to be for our children. So I want to stop there. One question I want to answer, of course, is is a question from one of the listeners, that what would we do to force the government to come to the round table, and what are the consequences? Well, we don't have power to force the government to come to the round table, but we are going to what do we call the moral suasion. We have to appeal to the conscience of the government that the direction the country is going, that the country is going to fall apart unless we recalibrate the way we do business. And of course, we will use some tools that are within our power to to try to persuade the government. And so we have no power to force the government, but we are appealing to the moral conscience of the government and the people who are inside the government to realize that the trajectory doesn't look very good. The fake peace that they want to project is not going to work. It is being betrayed in Pibor, being betrayed in the Sholo Kingdom, being betrayed between the Twitch and ABA, and is being betrayed by the wanton, reckless situation that took place in Malakal. I mean, in Mongala, where some people went and shut down all the cattle and. Yeah, so really the trajectory doesn't look comparable and doesn't project what you want to see, which is a peaceful country. We are not seeing that, and I think that should persuade anyone to want to talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Awuolic, for answering the questions. I'm really glad the way this you gentlemen from Clubhouse and also on the podium here are trying to articulate the issues of our country and appeal to the sense of all South Sudanese who are listening on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on Clubhouse. Exactly, that is how maturity should be. I really appreciate both of you for that. Before I come to Edmund Yakani, I know, Edmund, you are too busy to follow up the incidents that is going on now in a BI area. That's why you are off and on. But we really appreciate your work. Keep doing that. Maybe you will update us maybe at the end of the week or maybe early next week on what is happening in the other side of a BI area. We have one of South Sudanese who is also the activist like you, and the signatory also to the agreement, someone who has worked thoroughly to make sure South Sudan should be at least a better country in terms of respecting human rights and also good governance. And afterward, he decided to also to be vocals under PCCA, and that is Rajah Mandis. You are there on Clubhouse, and we will give you a chance to give us your perspective in regard to the speech of the president. We are here to examine the speech of the president and see how heavy it was and what impact will it really create to neutralize all these crises in our country, including the economic crisis. And we are glad that you join us there on Clubhouse. I will just give it to 2 minutes to Edmund Yakani, and then we come back to you, Rajah Mandis. And thereafter, I'm pretty sure Walmar Anya also need to say something, and also the chairperson of SPLM chapter, United States of America, Benjamin. But Edmund, 2 minutes to give us your thoughts too in regard to the conversation that has been going on.
Thank you very much. As you said, I'm really keen on. I have my colleagues on the ground. We are trying to put a bit of advocacy towards what's going on around the area of ABA. As you say, that's why I'm off on. But my take is this. One thing that I'd like to be honest and sincere to all of us as South Sudanese, wherever we are at our various capacities. If we don't take responsibility to be a disciplined political elites, the country that we aspire to have will never exist. Because the big challenge for South Sudanese, wherever we are, including me, it is really political discipline. If you're not politically disciplined, the state and the nation that we call South Sudan we can't get it. And that's why one of the biggest indicators of political discipline is commitment to what you think is the pathway and keep on striking towards that direction. And that's for me what my position is, that all of us know ourselves, all of us know what's the problem in this country, all of us know everything that's happening in this country. As usually I used to say when I attend this forum, one of the biggest problems here we have, it is we don't have a genuine political leadership that take responsibility. We have a clique of individuals and groups that sometimes shape opinion of how things will be done. So for me, that's the biggest challenge that we need to get through and really push the political elites that are in power. All of us are political elites, but some of us are in power in running the machinery of the government. But if you don't have that political discipline, and normally, recently I was telling somebody, one of my lessons that I have learned throughout since the 2013 until the date of today, I learned that when you have political indiscipline, when you have politicians who are indisciplined, they normally nurture and form indisciplined government. That's my lesson I've learned. That it's until when you have a disciplined politicians, they will nurture and they will form disciplined government. One of the suffering we have is that we have so much indiscipline. We shift goalposts. So for me, we have the responsibility. And what Abraham was saying is that the freedom of expression should not be sanctioned, should not be preconditioned. As a human beings, we have the right to speak. We have the right to express our opinion. And the way you respect me expressing my opinion is the same way I would also respect you in expressing your opinion. But if we start sanctioning freedom of expression, and usually I used to repeat, I say I've did a small exercise about the Arab Spring. One of my findings that in the Arab Spring is that actually when you start suppressing, when you start restricting freedom of expression, when you start preconditioning freedom of expression, actually you're mobilizing the masses of the nation, that's the population of the nation, against the existing government. The government's Middle East failed. Why? Simply because the system becoming so suppressive to freedom of expression, and citizens start building consensus that actually we are not allowed to speak. You're not allowed to speak, I'm dead. The only way is let's fight the person who denies the speech, the freedom of speech. So for me, that's one principle that I've learned from the Middle East, which I think in South Sudan is that until we have a disciplined political elites, we can't frame the state we have. And one of the culture of discipline in political science is the dialogue. Embrace dialogue, let people talk, because maybe through that talking, we will build consensus. We will discover a new pathway. We'll discover a new paradigm that we can take us to the state we want. That's what I'd like to say. The other thing I'd like to bring forward that as we're concluding is that what is going on now as a violence at the state's level, to be honest and to be sincere with you, these are people who are discontented politically and they can't establish anything. The only way is create deadly communal violence as a ladder to negotiate your pathway to power. I, the one speaking, I have seen a couple of politicians who use violence. And in the name of violence, they go to meet the president and they start begging political seats. So it means the death of the people is an opportunity for them to see president and beg for political seats. And if we mean that, are we able to destabilize South Sudan? If we have political leaderships that are very strong, and I give just the case study of Governor Ring. Look at when he went to Rumbek, he cut down the problems. He cut down everything. It's just application of rule of law. And application of rule of law is not, it is not a soft process. Sometimes it require hardships. So this is what I like to say, that for me, that's the reality that we have to stand for. So the political leadership. And when you come to the agreement, why the agreement failed? The agreement simply failed because friends that eat in the same plate have disagreed. They know the details of why they disagree. And they tend to control people not to take it over. And that's why somebody like me, I will not give up. I will follow these politicians until the last minute, because history has to be written. I can't write history without knowing the facts where it is. That's why I keep on tracking them, following them. And I know my brother will say that, why do we sign this agreement? I do agree with Abraham Awuolic. That's really a real question. But the consciousness of education is that you have the right to choice. I choose to follow them and track them. And I choose to document whatever I'm witnessing, so that tomorrow in history I can present. So I think that's my take. And I like to say, I'm really sorry that I couldn't be consistently following, because I'm really tracking the incidents happening. And as we speak now, even the side of Pibor, as right now I'm speaking, the early warning is telling us that even the Gajak Nur from Ethiopia are heading towards Pibor. So what type of state are we heading to? The simplest way is that let's take responsibility and let us embrace dialogue as the best way. Violence will never gain us. We can use it all possible ways. At the end of the day, loss of lives. But also, dialogue cannot succeed if we don't express ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani, for that. We really appreciate your commitment in when it comes to the issues of communal violence across the state and across the country. Keep doing that, and we'll always invite you to come and update us the new emerging incidences in our country. Abraham Adit, let's move back to Clubhouse and invite Rajab Mandis to weigh in regard to the topic at hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mujok. Ustaz Rajab, if you can hear my voice, you can take the floor now. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Comrade Madi Makul, for the moderation and for convening this session. I also extend my New Year greetings to my colleagues, Awuolic and Yakani, and their compatriots from the SPLM, Manon and Wall. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some comments on this subject matter. And I will not dwell so much on the speech of the president, because both Awuolic and Yakani have done a commendable job in explaining that or sharing views on that, views that I also agree with. If I should make a comment on that, I would recall what one MP said one time we traveled together on a plane, and there was a speech from the president, and I said the president delivered a very powerful speech. I was telling this MP, I think it was say two or 3 years ago, and he smiled at me and said, "Do you think anyone takes the president serious in his speeches?" And I tend to think that this is the same case today. These written speeches of the president are not taken serious anymore, because they have been there since independence. In fact, on the Independence Day, in his speech, he said, our detractors had already written us off, charging us that we are quick to resort to violence, but not to use dialogue to resolve our issues, and that it was incumbent upon us, the people of South Sudan, to prove our detractors wrong. And what did we do today? We have only proven them right. So I took note of the speech of the president, but I don't think it is anything new. And as the MP once said to me, no one takes the president serious in his speeches anymore, because these speeches are only words that are not concretely translated to action. And we can actually go down to list so many of these speeches and promises he made in those speeches that have not been taken anywhere from the documents. I want to go straight to respond to some of the questions raised by Brother Wall, particularly on the issue of the extension that Edmund and I are signatories to the peace agreement, and now we are disagreeing with the extension. At least on my side, I disagree with the extension. And so who is wondering whether we read the text of the agreement before appending our signatures, or we simply signed the agreement betraying the people of South Sudan without reading the document. As I put out in the comment, we did not only sign the agreement, we actually contributed to the text of the agreement. In all the period of the negotiations, that took close to 10 months or so, we were involved in discussions and contributions to the text of the agreement until the time the agreement was signed. To date, I do not disagree with the content of the agreement. I fully believe in the content of the agreement that, if implemented as it is, would help to change the situation in our country. It would have helped deliver peace and stability, which is the major core objective of the agreement, and it would have helped to address the immense humanitarian crisis in the country. The millions of our citizens who are outside the country and those who are in displacement camps would have returned to their homes and villages. Unfortunately, more people got displaced, and more people are facing humanitarian crisis, and more violence continued to define life in our across the country, indicating that the agreement is not meeting its intended objectives. Now, allow me say this about the agreement itself and the issue of the extension. Particularly with the extension, this extension offers nothing in terms of implementation of the peace agreement. process forward. The last time I sat in the RJMEC meeting, the Reconstituted Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission representing civil society, and it is the highest oversight mechanism of the peace agreement. We had a meeting in September 2020, and then another meeting in November 2020. In September, when we met, there was serious fighting in Maroto. To that, Unified Training Center was being destroyed. And when we met again in November, again fighting resumed. That same morning as we were sitting for the meeting. Meaning that all the discussions and recommendations made by all the security mechanisms to the government were not implemented, and so fighting resumed in Moroto in November, the morning of the meeting of RJMEC. And I raised this concern, and I said, what was the purpose of RJMEC meeting now? Because all recommendations being presented were not taken, and the same things you would discuss today are the same things that you would discuss in the next meeting. And therefore, the RJMEC meeting should actually be suspended until such a time that there was convincing commitment from the parties to implement the resolutions of those meetings. And that was not taken out well by some of the ministers in the government. And I saw no hope, because I would see security mechanisms and the commanders presenting meaningful recommendations, but all of those were being abandoned. Since I abandoned my participation in the peace process and I resigned from RJMEC to date, thousands of South Sudanese have been killed. If there was anyone who was responsible enough in the leadership to listen to the voices of the citizens in all the processes, in our contributions to the peace process, the discussions held like this, and also, most importantly, the recommendations from the National Dialogue Conference, National Dialogue process, thousands of our citizens who died would not have died. Those lives would have been saved. The suffering and abuses other thousands and hundreds of thousands or millions have been subjected to would have been averted. Now, at least I am happy in my conscience that I am not an endorsement. I am not an endorsement to the killings and the sufferings. By stepping out, at least I have maintained a clear conscience that I am not directly responsible for participating in these processes that are now actually only undermining the peace agreement. Now, our brother Manon, one also said there is no provision in the agreement that says the government should exit if the agreement fails, meaning that they have the right to extend themselves in power as many times as they would wish. Now, here is the thing. The agreement and also the Constitution give us the right, not only the government the rights, but also give citizens the right to express themselves, to assemble, and to participate in the affairs of the country. And it is from this basis, the same rights that has been granted to the parties that we also use, that is also granted to us as citizens to demand accountability, from these political leaders. Now, the agreement is a result of revitalization. If I could go back a little bit, revitalization of the 2015 agreement. If there is no provision for for the parties to exit, there was even no provision called revitalization in the entire content of the 2015 agreement that then got revitalized in 2018. But the revitalization happened out of necessity because the agreement had completely failed, as was the agreement of 2015. So when that agreement failed in 2015, there was no provision in the agreement that this should be revitalized. But common sense demanded that something should be done to get the country to move. And that's why IGAD called for revitalization. Now, if it was IGAD that made the call for what we are saying here, Awuolic and myself and many others, I know South Sudanese would possibly have accepted this. But our country is our country. And the responsibility to make this country better falls on us as citizens of the country. And so we are arguing on this basis that even if there is no provision for the parties to exit, this agreement is just a framework for peace, not a license for us as a country and as people to abandon the principles that guided our struggle for the liberation and independence of our country. And those principles are very clear, outlined both in the literature of the liberation struggle and also in the constitution. What we are doing today to South Sudan and to ourselves is completely the opposite of what what we aspired to have as people. And so I would recall actually what Garang once said when he disagreed with the wrong labeling of the problem of the Sudan as the problem of Southern Sudan. He said it was not the problem of Southern Sudan, but it was the problem of failure of governance in Khartoum. He prophesied really very clearly in his last speeches while they were working on the CPA that we will have the real problem of Southern Sudan if we formed the government of Southern Sudan, which actually is now South Sudan, that he did not live to see, and we continue to do the same things that were happening that Khartoum was doing. And the prophecy has been fulfilled. We now have the real problem of South Sudan. Unfortunately, this same problem that was there, the failure of governance in Khartoum, or the problem of governance in Khartoum, is now the same problem of governance in Juba, which is being wrongly labeled as the problem of citizens, as the problem of the opposition, as the problem of the PCCA, and so on. It has remained the same as before we became independent, the problem of failure of governance at the center, and now it is the same thing that we are facing. Unless we really address these things and go back to the basics, of why we became independent, we are not going to go anywhere. And so challenging the failed system and the failed status quo and the failed agreement is not far-fetched. It's the reality of the situation that we have gone wrong, and we need to realize this. Fortunately, we have not called for destruction, and we have not contributed to destruction. We who are being blamed have never spilled the blood of any citizen of our country, not even a rat. We have called for a peaceful means for all South Sudanese. This is what President Kiir had said when he delivered his speech on the 9th of July 2011. That our detractors had accused us that we had written us off, and also charged that we do not know how to solve our problems through dialogue, but we are quick to revert to violence. We have simply called for peaceful means to resolve this crisis, even including the call for roundtable conference. Now, this is taken as a wrong approach. I know that if we had taken up guns and went behind Table Kujur, Awuolic and I and the other colleagues, and went behind Table Kujur for a few days, we would have been now in Juba in very powerful government positions with protection from the government and with a lot of resources being dished to us, like those who have taken arms in the past. The issue is that, we have to listen to ourselves. We have to listen to ourselves. We should listen to the voices that came from the national dialogue. We should listen to the voices that came from the agreement itself, and we should listen to these voices coming from citizens. Unless we do that, this blame game is not going to take us anywhere. And as John Garang prophesied, now that we continue to do the same things Khartoum was doing, we now will continue to have the real problems of South Sudan, and our people will continue to die. The unfortunate part is that, of course, it happens like these people who are dying are very far away. But if these are our real family members, our sons, our daughters, and brothers and sisters, and all this, all of us here would have agreed that something should be done to rescue the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ustaz Rajab Mahandis. So I will yield microphone back to Studio Majok. If you are there, so you can go ahead. So we're about to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abraham Adit.
And thank you so much, Raja Mandis, for your input in regard to today table talk. Actually, we really appreciate each one of you for your inputs and for your time. I think we have really exhausted the topic which you were actually intended to analyze. And after this juncture, I will just allow two guests in the studio to give us their last remarks in regard to the issues of our country, and then we will end our show. Meanwhile, the clubhouse will still actually be on if you are interested to discuss more in regard to this topic. That's what I can say. And then let me give chance to Abraham Awuolic to give us his last remark. Abraham?
Well, thank you very much, Brother Majok and Abraham Adit and Chief Edmund Yakani and Rajab Mohandis. And I want to appreciate Brother Manon and Wal Peter Moranyar, who have also made their comments. This is a wonderful exercise that we should talk and discuss about our country. We all love our country, and we want the best. We want the best for our country, and we have different perspective about how to achieve that future for our country. And so my intention today was to look at what the president says, and really what Lagos State media did is the right thing. What the president says is always a policy, because the president is the most powerful man in the country, and what he says is what gets done. And so we want the president to think deeply about what he says and make sure that what he says is followed up with actions. And so if the president wants the year 2023 to be a year of peace, he has to show clearly that by action that is what he wants, and the country will follow him. The country will follow him. The country is yearning for peace. The country is yearning for a new direction. And those who are working with the president should also respect the president by doing what he says and putting things into action. Things that the president say are not said for the sake of saying. They are said because they are policies. This is what he wants to do for the country. And so we are not in opposition simply for the sake of it. We are in opposition because we think that something is wrong and the country is not going in the right direction. The country is not going as we had envisioned it. And it is, if we are all players, we all know that when players are playing the field, there are mistakes that they make that they don't see. But the spectators will see those mistakes very clearly. As well, the spectators see certain things simple, but the players know that those things are difficult. And so there is a give and take in that situation. So what is happening in South Sudan right now is that we are losing the country. The violence is becoming the way of life, and it doesn't have to be. In 2005, when the peace agreement was signed between Sudan and the SPLM, the whole country went silent. You could drive from Numili all the way to Khartoum, and nobody will ask you. Why? Because people were told by the leaders. John Garang and President Bashir went around and said, we are at peace. We are no longer fighting. Fighting is over. And people believed them. And they trusted them. And so they actually decided in their own villages to achieve peace. They did not even need anyone to tell them, you stop fighting. They actually stopped fighting. And so that is what the RRCs has failed to do. They don't trust the actors because the actors don't mean what they say. And therefore, there is a peace agreement on the paper, but there is no peace agreement at home. And we are trying to say, let us take the peace agreement from the paper, take it home, so that people move forward. So we want to move forward. We want to move our children back to the country from Kenya, from Uganda, from Khartoum, from Cairo, from the United States, from Canada, from London, and from Australia. We want to have a beautiful country that we love to live in. And we cannot achieve that if we remain silent in the face of few men spoiling everything for everybody. So let the year 2023 be genuinely a year of peace. And peace talk is talking so that we know what the problem is. But we cannot do one thing over and over again. The fact of the matter is that President Kirma is prepared to exit power. As long as he is in power, the country will not be fixed. Those of us who keep cattle, once you shape the horns of your bull, you cannot reshape it again. The president's policies have been wrongly shaped, and they cannot be fixed. The only thing that will save the country is for him to prepare a peaceful transfer of power. I think that is the only thing, that is the last good thing the president can do. The country can no longer move forward with the president. And I know those who support the president will say, I don't like the president for the sake of it. I'm very honest in what I'm saying. The president himself is the real obstacle to peace in South Sudan, and his desire to continue to stay in power derives every policy that he makes, including that creation of violence. And this is the bottom line. It is both he and Dr. Riek Machar. I think they have done the best they could do for the people of South Sudan. It is time for them to move on and put the country on the right path by witnessing and overseeing a peaceful transfer of power. If they can do that, and if they can allow that election to happen in which they cannot participate, but people of their choice participate, I think the country will be peaceful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Abraham, for your remark. Brother Edmund Yakani, if you are there, kindly activate your mic and give us your last parting shot. All right, it seemed like Edmund Yakani busy somewhere. Abraham, read.
Okay, now we can give this chance to Ustaz Manon. Manon, go ahead, put your last remark in.
Okay, thank you again, Ustaz Madib and Majok and the media, and the whole audience, and also our guests, Ustaz Abrams and Ustaz Edmund, for the contribution that we shared this topic.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My departing thought is that.
Okay. Yeah. He's having a network connection. Okay.
Edmund, we are not hearing you. I think you have a network issue.
No?
The connectivity is weak. We are not hearing you completely. Maybe you can drop and then you sign in again. We are not hearing you. You can drop and then you sign in again.
Your net, yep,
Yeah.
Move it.
Yeah, Abraham, you can drop him and then let Manon continue.
Okay, go ahead, Manon.
Okay, thank you again. As I said, I just want to thank everyone, including those who are listening down there. For it is very important for all of us. That's why we are here. Without them being listening, I think we will not be here in Panama. And I thank the League Media against. I believe that the extension of the agreements was necessary due to a statement stated by the first Vice President that we have no alternative than extension. We have only two options. Either we crash, go back to square one to war, or extend an agreement in order for us to complete. And then the whole agreement, an agreement always there's evil in detail. This is something that everybody is aware about it. Those are the challenges. It does not mean that they are not serious about implementation of the agreement. And also, we cannot hold one person of all crises in the country. And I do agree with Edmund when he said that our problem is a lack of political discipline in South Sudan. We are actually seen like we are lacking discipline, and a lacking of discipline politically is where we lack collective responsibility to accept that we are all responsible for whatever is happening in our country, and then we have to come together and address the challenges collectively when we accept the responsibility that we all are part of what is happening. National dialogue that was brought up. National dialogue is a very important document. It's a document of the people of South Sudan. And I believe the reason that the national dialogue is not implemented, we're all aware about it because we have RSS as an agreement, as a treaty. It's not just a framework, it's an agreement and it's a treaty. Therefore, any view of South Sudanese will be incorporated into national constitution development process. And that's why I said earlier that the bill that actually making, the bill of the constitution making process is so important. So at least the opinions of our people in national dialogue will be incorporated into our constitution and will present the view of our people in the way we need to governing our country. The most important here is that we have to acknowledge that the president's speech was important and was essential and addressed a lot of important issues, especially issue of reconciliation and forgiveness to one another, and then development so our country can move forward for the development is very important. So let us acknowledge it and let us hope that the whole institution of government institution and the stakeholders in the government, they have to take the speech as a policy of the governments, and they have to put it into practical, so it can be realized that the president's speech will actually become the policy of the government, so we can move our country forward. Let us hope for the best for our country. Let us also promote the peace in 2023, and instead of the violence in the country. I think our contribution also, whether in opposition in the social media, the lack of the genuine reasoning in social media, and the lack of the genuine talk or communication for the issue that are common interests that can bring us together rather than the thing that can divide us. I think that's very important. And also we hope for the opposition also to take this year as a year of forgiveness and reconciliation, and to reduce the increasing of division of the tribalism debate that is going on in the social media. I think it will not serve any interest for the nation building, and it is very important that we have to stay away from that, and then let us focus on national issue, and let us see the things that are going around the country, whether in insecurity or economics or the issue of the peace, the question of peace, the challenges, and the challenges are responsibility of every South Sudanese citizens, collectively. It's not just something that we hold a specific group or a specific leaders to be responsible for it. And I will say thank you for opportunity for media, and I will appreciate the opportunity, and let us hope for the best for our country and for the South Sudan in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Ustaz Manon. Okay, now we can yell it back to Ustaz Raja Mahandis. Oh, hang on, Raja Mahandis. Let me go back to Edmund. Edmund, he's back, so go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think my closing remarks that I'd like to share with everybody is that we have reached a point where really building the sense of being nationalists and standing for the nation is required. And this sense is required by being genuine, by being committed, by being sincere, and by demonstrating political maturity. Because, as I said, is that one of the biggest things is that as we discuss political issues, we tend to discuss it from the angle of leaving the blame and taking no responsibility for sorting out the issues that are there. So for me, that's one thing. Specific to His Excellency President as the head of the state, and I'm not addressing him as a person, as a self, I'm addressing him as a figure that is enshrined in our constitution, which is our mother law as a president, he's a symbol of the nation, is really to start checking the team he is working with. I had a feeling that the team around the president, some of them are not genuine. Some of them are opportunists who just want to show a gesture that they stand for with the president, but actually what they're doing is contrary to what the citizens want as enshrined in the constitution. And that's what I conclude by using the word political indiscipline. The declaration of 2023 is a year's forgiveness. It carries three values. If you want really to achieve that, there's really 2023 will be a year of forgiveness, reconciliation, and development. One, we need to see no restriction to civic and political space. Why? Because if we are genuine to ourselves and we are honest, and we don't have any negative attitude towards each other, and we have very good political attitude that is informed with political maturity, constitution-making process can be another political pathway of gaining the state and the nation of South Sudan that we wish to have when we start the struggle since 1955. But if we tend to continue to restrict civic and political space, we tend to mobilize citizens against the government. That's really my concluding remark. And of course, what is happening now in the communities, it is a collapse of the rule of law. Rule of law is now completely down in the country, and individuals can see. You know, I'll tell you, I was really closely monitoring the incidents of Gumruk. New weaponry and ammunitions that were purchased by national budget is being used by youth, by community members who are armed. Who really supply them? Who get these guns and these bullets and these ammunitions out of the stores and supply there? That's one question that is very critical. And if people who are defining themselves as community, armed community, can pursue an armed war for 6 hours, non-stop, where is the store of the bullets that they're using? So for me, the biggest challenge that the president have, and everybody who want to play a political responsibility, let us question what defines you and me as a nationalist. So for me, that's what we want to do. What defines us is, let's talk, let's sit, let's argue, let's not precondition argument, let's listen, and let's take other people's concerns serious as an opportunity of showing us a new pathway. That's what I'd like really to conclude with, and telling everybody, take responsibility to make South Sudan as a peaceful state and a peaceful nation. Don't blame, don't resist, don't stick to what you know and you think is the best. No, listen to other sides of the story. They may show you something that you may learn out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edmund Yakani. Abraham Adit, you were mentioning Rajal Mandis. If he's there, then 1 minute, and then
we have
we'll get back to the studio.
Yeah, we have Comrade Dengbol joining us too. We can give him a chance before Rajab came in to put in his last remark. So, Comrade Dengbol, if you can hear me, go ahead, we can give you 2-3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Comrade Abraham, Comrade Abraham Awuolic, Comrade Rajaf Mandis, Comrade Edmund Yakani. I also see Comrade Walmoranya. I'm not seeing him anymore. I see Comrade Manon over there. I greet all of you. This is Dengbol Arrival, Chairman of the National Democratic Alliance. I am only going to ask my brother Edmund Yakani a few questions in his capacity as leader of civil society in South Sudan. Actually, you could say that one of the leading civil society organizations right now in South Sudan, and the voice of civil society at this particular time. Comrade Edmund, if you remember, I called you when I was in Cuba, maybe about 2 months ago, and I asked if I can meet with you. The reason I was in Cuba is to seek ways in which we can register our political party with the Political Parties Council. And you know the whole history in relation to the violent shutdown of the office of the the Political Parties Council on the 24th of March, 2022. My question is, when is this office going to be opened, and what is the position of the civil society on issuing political space in the country? You must have read, if you're in Cuba, you must have read something in the newspaper yesterday, something that we actually wrote concerning this. So that's the thing. So we want to hear what the civil society is saying and what you've been doing to make sure that we are on the path to democratization of the country, and that the SPLM and other political parties are not the only one who seem to have political space, and the rest are not being allowed to operate. That's one question. Two is the issue of implementation of the artists and also the roadmap. One of the things that I know that is not happening is there seem to be some vice presidents who have not left Cuba ever since they were appointed until now, and there seem to be some that have the freedom to move wherever they want to go to. You talked about political maturity and on the side of our leaders. Why is Dr. Yap not able to even get out of Cuba? What is his purpose of being first vice president if he cannot play the role of first vice president? And do you think the agreement is most likely to be implemented? I'm talking about the roadmap now that we are almost reaching February, which will be basically the beginning of the 24 months.
Thank you, Comrade Dengbol. Now I can yield microphone back to Edmund. You can go ahead and answer those questions.
Yes. Am I clear there?
Yeah, you are clear.
Let me put my video on.
I hope everyone was hearing me.
Yes.
Yes. So can I answer Dengbol?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, answer him.
Yes. Yes, let me answer Dengbol in regards to he was in Juba. He tried to reach out to me.
Hang on, Rajab, hang on. Let Edmund answer those questions, and then I will come back to you. Rajab, can you close the mic?
Moderators, are you there?
Hang on. Rajab, can you hang on for a second? Let Edmund answer those questions, then we will come back to you. So thank you. Go ahead, Edmund.
Okay, thank you. Dengbol, he called me at a moment when there were crisis going between the Twitch Mayardi Dinka and the Ngok. And we were supposed to meet with him in Juba. We set an appointment. But there was a pressure for me to rush to WOW to really mobilize the civil society for us to subside the tension which is going on. Because by then, Vice President Abdul Baghi attempted, but he couldn't really bring an end or prevent the violence, which of course the violence have renewed yesterday as I speak today when I was starting my statement. So I couldn't really interact with him. But then, Paul, one thing I'd like to tell you that there was a fear. There was a fear from, I like to say, this is, Paul, if I want to answer you, here is my experience, and really take it from me and take it as my personal experience rather than my institution. One, when you talk of civic space, the civic space is interpreted by the two parties whom they constitute themselves as the principals, the SPLM and the SPLM-IO. They have their own interpretation of the civic space. And I'll give an example, practical example of that interpretation. And later on, you will, I hope I can hear from you the response. Remember, there's a regular call for civic space. And I remember when the roadmap was signed, and when I was invited as a to speak, I challenged them over the civic space, and Dr. Riek Machar quoted my call for open civic and political space. So all this time, we have been consistently demanding civic space because it's not only political space, we need civic and political space. So on the 20th of October, the presidency met. So if I say presidents, means President Salva and the first vice president and the vice presidents, they met. And they made an instruction, which was communicated by Honorable Benjamin Marial on the 20th of October, 2022. And the instruction was directed specifically to state governors, chief administrators of administrative areas, county commissioners, to open political space. The idea is that allow other political parties to exercise their political rights as enshrined in the Bill of Rights and other section or other provisions or other articles of the Constitution. So this directive was communicated. Immediately, violations took place. And I'll give you two examples. One of the violations was that in Pariang, a county commissioner who is an SPLM-IO detained over 23 or I think 30-something SPLM members. And we start hearing SPLM start saying, oh, we need a civic space to be open, political space to be open in Pariang County because our members are detained by IO commission. I think took 2 days or 3 days negotiation, they were released from detention. Then after a week, in Northern Baragazal, SPLM-IO was to organize the event of the secretariat, they were denied. Fighting went over there, clashes, and those IO start saying, oh, civic space is shrinking in Northern Baragazal because we are supposed to launch our secretariat, and it happened to them in other locations. The only state that I like to take here as an example, the only state I've seen a political party that is opposition, who is the current deputy governor of Jongole State, who is an SPLM, he was able to go and attend SPLM-IO event in Jongole State, and it became a case study. That's the political attitude one. He went and attended the event as a SPLM, and it's an SPLM-IO. Some SPLM members are shouting at him, why do that? He didn't order any restriction. He's saying, look here, this is what the agreement demanded. And his example became a case study, which has been used in several events as a positive case study, that a politician who is matured, who embraced political culture. So I would like to bring that. So this continues. When come to the 6th Governors Forum, a resolution number 14, we push harder, though there's a resistance, but the resolution was adopted. A resolution which speaks to what those my brothers, to what my brothers were saying, Abraham Awuolic and Rajab, about the freedom for expression. There's a resolution which says all leaders must embrace constructive criticism. The word used is constructive criticism because, yes, criticism has to be constructive within the context of the law. So we must embrace that. It was pushed, that resolution. So by signing the legislation or the act on the constitutional making process, whether we like or we don't like, the constitutional making process is a political process. So now, and if you follow the timeline of the roadmap, that December 2024, we need to have elections. Now, if you look at the speech of the president, elections will be preconditioned by 2 political activities. One is constitution must be in place. Second one is population census must be in place. And if we're going for elections, elections is not an event of churches and mosques or social clubs. It's an event of political parties. So we have been pushing, as I speak per now, the Political Parties Act was passed as in the table of, it is in the table of the president for signing. Those are some of the pending bills that have been calling for the president to sign, because if that act is signed, then the Political Parties Council should be reconstituted. Because if you work with the current Political Party Council that is not in line with the provisional agreement, it may become partisan and lean to one particular side and leave other sides. Because honestly, without multi-democracy, without a multi-party system, transitioning from the current situation to a better situation, it will not help us. We can't transition with the same colors. We have to transition where we have it. But also comes, people want to establish political parties have to be genuine, like when we were discussing with you when you called me. So we are expecting that, to the best of my knowledge, that I know from the corridors of information around the power, is that next week the Political Parties Act will be signed into a law. Then the Political Party Council will be reconstituted. And once it's reconstituted, then the question of open political, because you can't register a political party under the Political Party Current Act. If you look at the condition that you need to register your members, you can't register your members if you don't have the freedom of political rallies to mobilize political party members. So for me, that's a challenge that is coming. And that's why I said, I tell you, Bolden, part of our responsibility is not to remain silent, is to talk and to call. If it means going to the grave because of that call, it will be a very good for history to know that some people are demanding for political freedoms and rights to be exercised. And that's why somebody like me, I took the responsibility to keep on calling. And that's why if you see recently, we made a statement that these are key institutions before the Viceroy of the Pope need to be established. And you cannot establish a political parties council without signing the Political Parties Act into a law. That's one thing. The implementation of the revitalized of the roadmap. My colleague Rajab have spoke to it. And of course, people take different positions. Mine, I take a position that I want to follow these politicians. I want to see the end results that they want to play around. I will tell you the implementation of the roadmap. Even on the roadmap, you bring an agreement and you assign Jesus Christ as to be the chair of RGMEC and so like RGMEC, and you bring the Holy Spirit to be the chair. With that trust and confidence among the principles of the parties that signed the agreement, this agreement is not to be succeeding. The roadmap will suffer the same suffering since 2015 if we don't. And this year, I want to be very honest and sincere. And I know that there's a members here who might have belonged to these political parties. Without trust, without regaining trust, I'm not saying building, rebuilding is something different. For me, it's regaining. Without regaining trust between Salva and Riek Machar as a president and first vice president, political transition in this country will be subject to roadblocks that we will never go through. And one of it is the travels that you have asked. I asked somebody, if Riek travel alone, will all IO travel? Obviously, the answer is no. So, but now, if we really have a trust and confidence among ourselves as South Sudanese, can we not compromise? And secondly, I would like to answer my colleague also, Deng Bol, is that in all schools of politics, there's no any political activity that the winners takes all. All political activities becoming better and democracy come to exist when we compromise. Democracy does not exist where there's no political compromises. So part of the compromises is give the first vice president the freedom of movement. If he goes alone, he cannot go with the party as a whole, as a signal of trust and confidence. But the problem is that both the president and the first vice president are hijacked by individuals who does not provide them the accurate information. And this goes to especially our colleague who is here from SPLM, and of course, SPLM you are following here. The party is not in charge of the leaders driving machinery of the government. It's some individuals, which sometimes I actually say that actually the implemented agreement was hijacked. Because people who shape the opinion that determines the political decisions are not really the people who represent the parties. SPLM is suffering from the same, SPLM is suffering from the same, maybe even new political parties come. SOA is suffering from the same. The principles does not allow the parties to take charge of the implementation. They only use the parties for political gathering, political events. There's indicators that are very clear. And what does it mean? So, and for me, it's a complete, what we're suffering from is a complete failure of political establishments. We didn't establish political parties on the principle that political parties operate with their political basic documents that could have been used as an instrument of mobilizing public opinion and public support, whether through votes, through elections, or through standing behind the agendas of the parties. This is not the case. With political parties, that individual role in the party play a bigger role over the party's interests. So when you have a clique of individuals that constitute the machinery within the party, those individuals are everything. They're the party that they represent. So for me, that's the disease that we have. And that's why like what I was telling you, Deng Paul, is that until we are genuine to ourselves, until we are honest, we can't transition this country. And that's why I'm saying political maturity, political disciplines are the seeds of a democratic political establishment for the nation that we want, if we want to rule ourselves under the principle of good governance and democracy. Without political maturity, without political discipline, this country will suffer and everybody will seek to be a politician or a general simply for personal gain, not for the best interests of the country or what do we call the common interests of the citizens of the Republic of South Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmund. Now I can go back to Rajab. Rajab Handis, you can put.
Abraham, let me thank him. Thank you, Comrade Edmund, you have answered me sufficiently, and congratulations for the award. And keep doing what you're doing. You're doing it for all of us. We're proud of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajab.
Yes, thank you once again, Chief Adit, for the opportunity. Yes, you mentioned this should be our final comments, and so, well, there's just a lot that we could discuss on this subject matter, but let me summarize this as such, that, you know, we possibly might need to look at, you know, reshaping the form of our discussions into from debate, like from different sides, to a form of a dialogue focusing really on points of agreement on the situation in South Sudan. We all agree on many of the issues that affect the country. And perhaps the way to go is to look at most of these things, not only in relation to the peace agreement, but also in relation to the principles that guided the struggle for the liberation and independence of our country, and as to where we are at the moment, and how we reconcile these positions. And then also look at our areas of disagreement as citizens. There are things we agree on. We need to consolidate those. For example, we all agree that no one wants to see violence in South Sudan, honestly. We all agree that our economy is in tatters. We all agree that politically we are failing in the country, in the region, and globally. We all agree that we are in trouble as a country. And so those areas where we agree on, we need to consolidate them and then move on to look at maybe areas of disagreement, and especially with regard to approaches on how to address these matters. And then with that, we could, as citizens and as people, possibly make progress towards contributing to solutions. Let me comment briefly on what the question raised by Comrade Goldeng, the chairman of the National Democratic Alliance. You have talked about the issue of registration of political parties and the failure to register your party and all that. Edmund was giving an explanation, like registration was not possible because the new act was not yet enacted, and so forth and so forth. To be honest, it is not really so much about registration, but it is about democracy itself. Political parties are key elements of democracy. They operate and thrive in democratic environment. Where there's no democracy, I find it difficult to see political parties actually effectively functioning. And so civil society entities as well. There will only be a certain limitation where you speak in environments that are not democratic, both for political parties and also for civil society entities. And in that regard, you would realize that there are few of us in these spaces that speak more freely, but there are many who may not be able to speak in depth and strongly because of this environment that is not democratic. So elements of democracy, like civil society, like political parties, like yours, the NDA, are not going to find any place to operate in. So don't hope that even if the Political Parties Act is enacted, signed into law, the Political Parties Council is reconstituted, there's going to be something different. What we are doing is like getting a fish to to swim in a desert. You get a fish from the river and put it in a desert sand to swim. Fish swims in rivers and cannot swim on sand. And so are democratic institutions. So forget about really getting the National Democratic Alliance operating as a political party effectively until such a time that there is an environment for democratic engagement. So that is the whole situation. One day it will be the act that is missing. The next day it will be permission that you have not taken. from the national security. The other day it will be issue of registration. The next day it will. All of these things will be hampering operations of political parties. So I don't see you getting anything meaningful to do as NDA until the environment is democratic for your entity, which is a democratic entity to operate. Now the issue of civic space being defined by two political parties, I think that this also is the issue of democracy, but also by all measures, and also as Awuolic said earlier, you know, some of these parties do not really have influence on the situation. They are there being used to simply legitimize a situation that they really have no serious control over. And so I don't believe that some of the parties, like these other parties in the OPP and SOA, and also even the IO, have strong influence on the issues of the civic and political spaces. I believe that it is only one entity of the Article that is led by President Salva Kiir, who manages most of these issues, including the security agents that control the civic space and the political space, that restricts even the movement of the whole first vice president. So the first vice president his powers and all this have been undermined, and things are not functioning as usual. So it doesn't really apply to both principles, so two parties or two principles. There is one leading party that bulldozes the situation and only manages the rest. The round table, the roadmap, the design of the roadmap, if you read the roadmap very clearly, is simply sliding the timelines, but not with any significant changes in the context of the agreement. And by writing this roadmap, the way it has been designed, it is started from the day even before its endorsement. There were tasks that should have been accomplished to enable the 24 months to then cover both constitution-making process and elections. Now, it is going to be close to almost 4 months, and by the time the transitional period ends in February, it could be close to 6 months, that the roadmap has not been meaningfully implemented, meaning that lots of provisions that would have been implemented to allow for the 24 months will not be accomplished. And the 24 months are exactly the period needed to produce the permanent constitution. That's the timeline only for writing the permanent constitution, which means some of the things that should have been done prior to that, and that the constitution should have been finished several months before the end of the 24 months extension, have now been missed, meaning that this roadmap is already almost a lost case. No matter how much they try, practically it is not, unless they shorten the period of the constitution-making process. The 24 months are not now enough to accomplish the tasks outlined in the roadmap. So largely the roadmap has also been missed, not implemented, just like the agreement itself. Some of the few things that have been done, most of these are actually what are referred to as procedural tasks. Procedural tasks meaning tasks that are meant to get the process to accomplish the provisions of the agreement. For example, enactment of laws, establishment of institutions are different things. The institutions can be established, and I've always referenced the DDR Commission that got established and the box was ticked. Until today, as we speak, this commission has not implemented any single project, meaning that it has not implemented its own mandate. So this agreement, these institutions could be established, these laws can be enacted, but they themselves, the institutions or the legal frameworks, do not implement themselves. They are only kind of taking boxes. Even graduation of the forces. The forces are graduated. The role of the forces are supposed to address security issues in the country, deliver peace, protect people, and all this. they have been graduated and the box has been ticked, they have not been deployed. Meaning that the end result of their graduation that was supposed to be improved security is not even being achieved. From the day they were graduated until today, you may agree with me that actually insecurity has increased. All this destruction that has happened in the greater Upper Nile region, Upper Nile and also parts of Jungle and the greater Pibor administrative area, parts of Equatoria and some of these places, go to APA and so forth, have happened when these forces have been graduated. So here a box has been ticked that the forces have been graduated, therefore progress has been made, but we actually, as part of the process, monitoring this process before I resigned from RJMEC, we were measuring progress by the impact of these processes. And so if there is an action in Juba and does not translate to anticipated outcome or impact on the ground, then that action is simply a procedural action that is meant to tick a box, but it is not translating into a change in the situation in the country. So we should not be very hopeful that the laws have been enacted. We have institutions that have been established, but they have remained largely dysfunctional. So these laws, just like the Constitution and the rest of the agreement, may come into force, but may remain unimplemented and may not translate into improvements on the situation. Actually, as a matter of fact, this has been the case all along with the implementation of the agreement. And so we are still deep in the woods, and these are moments where leadership is demonstrated. And so the idea or the notion that the president has been hijacked, I think is possibly not right. This is the time he is supposed to be leading the country, and hijacking him or asking him to examine, as suggested earlier, examine his people around him is a way of displacing blames to the people around the president. But the president is supposed to be fully in charge. If he should examine the people around him, I think it would be right to recommend that he should actually examine his decisions of hiring the people around him, and also what he benefits or what he delivers with some of the people around him. So I do not fully agree with the notion that it's the people around the president, but I look at it as our ultimate leader in the country who should be in charge, fully in charge and in control of the decisions he takes, and sees that these decisions are implemented, and also manages the people. You know, our president is a manager in a way as well, managing the people that he hires and ensuring that they deliver what he wants them to deliver. All of these people who are hired, who work in the government, are actual extensions of the office of the president. The Ministry of Defense is an extension of the office of the president. The Ministry of the Interior is the same ministry. All of these ministries are actually offices of the president by extension. They are operational offices of the president. And so we should not cast blames on those who hold those offices. We should also look at whether they are given the required political support and resources. For a fact, I have been engaging with the mechanisms when I was in RJMEC, and these guys would lay out clear plans, but without political support and without resources, they would not go anywhere with those plans. So we have a real issue that we need to address, and the environment is not right, and so most of the processes that we should have used as citizens to contribute to changes in the situation are actually not practical because of the restrictions on the civic space. And that explains why in most cases people decide, and in fact it makes some of these restrictions make rebellion more attractive, because if you find that it does not work with you within the system, and if it doesn't work with you, your rights are also easily compromised. People let the push more attractive. So whatever is being done that undermines democratic processes actually makes crisis more attractive in the country. And therefore, we possibly need to re-evaluate and go back to the idea of us, Manon and I, and the others. We need to sit and look at areas where we really agree that things are right, where we agree that things are not right, and we also need to look at and build consensus on how we would approach the situation. I would say that finally, we may not need to continue to bank on the agreement because it is being undermined. If there is a miracle tomorrow to implement the agreement fully, I think the whole country will celebrate. But if we are going to muddle through it the way it is being done, I don't think it is going to take us far. And the worst thing is that suffering and loss of lives will continue. And so it is something that should break our conscience to begin to think, to do things a little differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Usas Rajamandis. I believe we are come to an end now. Joke, we are about to wrap up, so we now let us, if people in Clubhouse, you want to continue, we can leave that open, but we can close down to the studio. So for that, I would like to say thank you, Sir Rajab Mahandis, Comrade Manon, and Comrade Dengbol, and also our guest studio, Usas Abraham Awuolic, and Edmund Yakani for coming to Lagos State Media. It was a fruitful discussion. This is what our people of South Sudan need. We need dialogue. And that's what we want here, what we do in Lagos State Media. We bring all the parties at our media platform. Let us talk, and then the people of South Sudan will be the judge. Thank you. I yield my microphone back to you, my brother, William Haku.
Thank you so much, Abraham Adit. I will not take much, but to give word of appreciation to the gentlemen who share their wisdom and knowledge in regard to the issues of our country. I'll first give my appreciation to our two guests who decided to give us their time, Abraham Awuolic and Edmund Yakani. Thank you so much. And also we appreciate the discussions. You really show the maturity of discussions, and that portray the intellectual's image of any South Sudanese. We are so happy for you, the like of Walmoranyar, Manon, and also Rajab Mahandis, who joined us on Clubhouse. Thank you so much, and also Dengbol, who joined us lately, but he has also managed to pose some of his questions. That's what we want. We really appreciate both of you. You really touch base the things that South Sudanese ought to hear. And second appreciation goes to our viewers on Facebook here and also on Clubhouse. Thank you so much. South Sudanese, the two conversations cannot take place if there are no audience. But because of you, you always give them energy in order to pour out their knowledge and also to give you what they see and deem fit for the nation. And thank you so much, Abraham Adit, for always being there in the affairs of Lagos State Media and connecting us live to our active members on Clubhouse. I know you South Sudanese on Clubhouse, you are always 24/7 discussing the affairs of the country. Keep discussing them. Time will reward you, and God himself is always there watching the things that you are discussing. So long you discuss them in a gentle way, like the examples that you have just shown, and numerous discussions that you always are engaged in. Thank you so much on behalf of Lagos State Media. Thank you so much, the President Isaac Tieng, the Deputy President Bolma Kura Chen, and also the Information Secretary Gardemo Bok. We really appreciate you for being behind the scene. Thank you so much. May God bless all of you, and may God bless our Sudan. Keep talking. Thank you.
It's your boy Young Love. I give him that time. But your legs stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Panta Leg stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Ban walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching, Oga level leg, Gear Pow, Leg, Panda with Yay, Panchi America, Panya Dwal, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Paku Panda Jiro, what they be Dwal venting. Stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban Panta Leg stay the Panchi America, Banyi Dwal, Banaban walk on the lake, Kankara water no watching, Oga level leg, Gear Pow, Leg, Panda with Yay, Panchi America, Panya Dwal, Chingatonga Pandon, could you ever buy a check out, Paku Panda Jiro, what they be Dwal venting.